Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to season 6 and episode number 917. It is, I think it is, let me just check, 918, sorry, of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Oh, Canada, always 100% Canadian, and of course, always, absolutely always, beaverific, right there, little beaver. I am your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver, eh? And not with me as usual is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. A big thank you goes to our founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. Whew. Kids and cubs, how's your mental health today? I'm doing well-ish. Overall, well. Today, energy-wise, a little drop. Had a camping trip, of course, this weekend, as you know. Had hoped to get back early enough yesterday to be able to do a show, but we didn't get back home until 8:30 in the evening. And after unpacking and making some dinner, it was too late to do a show tomorrow, especially last night, especially since I hadn't had one prepared, and plus, needed to prepare one for today as well. Yeah, time did not happen. That did not work for us. For good reason for us. The weather was absolutely lovely yesterday afternoon, and we took advantage of it to stay a little longer at the campsite to go do a canoe trip. Paddled about 8 kilometers yesterday, and had a very lovely time doing it. Because the weekend, unfortunately, was rather cold. Every night got well under 10 degrees Celsius, with some cold winds and stuff. Sleep was not particularly good, unfortunately, during the camping trip. Um, Again, cold weather made it hard to sleep. For some reason, had to wake up every single night 3, 4 times to go to the bathroom, which never happens at home, but happened while I'm camping. And for some reason, it seems that our air mattress had a slow leak. So we thought it was maybe because of the cold weather just compressing the air and then making the mattress. But it seems that we had a slow leak in it. So we woke up many of the nights, well, basically sagging. And then whenever one of us moved, we ended up not rolling into each other or lying on top of each other. I got kicked and punched and slapped as we were trying to get comfortable. It was not a restful weekend. And last night, unfortunately, I thought that I would get back to my own bed and get a great night's sleep, but hardly slept a wink. So uh, I'm basically on now 3 weeks of not more than 5 hours on any given night, and a few nights feeling like I didn't sleep at all. Like clearly I did somewhere, but uh, I'm um, I'm a little fatigued and I'm a little slow. I will admit that right now I am in a lot of pain, which is one of the reasons I was a little slow getting started today. I spent some time on the floor trying to do some stretching so that I can sit long enough to do a show for you today. Um, and just having some trouble with focus, being this tired. Let's just say that setting up the show was not as smooth as it usually does. Things that normally take me about 10 minutes to do have been taking me about 20 to 25 minutes to do today because I just keep on veering off into la la land. And yeah, focus is a bit of an issue today. So I will do my best to do a good show for you today. But the camping trip was, aside from the cold and the inability to sleep and the, the mattress with the slow leak, actually rather good, believe it or not. Had some hiking, ate some good food. We went with a friend, so a good time with friends. Played a little petanque, which is nice because there was a sandy beach. Maybe Sweetie did try to go swimming, didn't get any further than the waist in because the water was just too cold. Um, but that canoe trip that we did yesterday, when the wind finally died down around 2 o'clock in the afternoon yesterday, just as we were getting ready to go, that was the highlight of the trip. That was just a beautiful moment. And I'm glad we did it, and we needed it because the with the cold weather, the trip had not turned out to be what we had hoped for in certain respects. So this allowed us to do that. We did have a hike though on the first day, which was also nice. And for those who are wondering, that did help a lot with my goal to try to lose weight. As you know, kids and cubs, we're going to have the mental health walk coming on June 20th, where we encourage people, particularly men and male identifying people, who might be struggling with mental health, to call a friend, another male friend, preferably, but anyone, of course, if they need, and to go out for a walk. Or if you are a male and male identifying and you have a male and male identifying friend, male or male identifying, not and, I should say, friend who might be struggling or you might be wondering about, invite them out for a walk and talk about mental health so that we can destigmatize it and let uh, our friends who happen to be men or male identifying, who frequently say that if there's a situation where in which they're struggling in their life, that they actually have no one to talk to or feel that they have no one to let them know that they do. So, um, very, very important thing that we're doing here. And hoping that you participate in that. And of course, as you know, I'm having a bit of a fundraiser where for every pound I lose, if you pledge a dollar or two, more if you like, to that, I will be collecting that money and donating it to our organization's beneficiaries for the mental health walk, which is the Men of the North program in La Ronge, Saskatchewan, which is Indigenous led, and of course the Lonely Man Project in St. John's, Newfoundland, um, in Labrador, of course. So if you are able to pledge a donation, just send an email to truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com and say, mental health walk pledge, and hopefully we can raise a couple of dollars. This is not intended, of course, so the mental health walk to be a fundraiser per se. It's more conscious awareness. But if we can do a little good along the way, that'd be great. And of course, if you yourselves would like to sponsor something, a local organization, make a little donation that way rather than contributing via us to our beneficiaries, please do so and send us a screenshot of your receipt. And that way we can know, have a number about how much we raised altogether, if that's something that you would like to do, because I know in the first year there's some of you who made some donations to some local organizations who you thought deserved a little boost, and we would be we absolutely encourage that. So whether you do it through us, whether you do it on your own accord, but please place the call and do go for a walk on June 20th. All of that activity has brought me back down to 161 pounds this morning. Still hoping to break through that 160 barrier. I got there. I got to 160 one day along there, and then started gaining weight. So hopefully, back some weight back. I've lost that again. So good on me. But hopefully that weight loss will continue and I can break that 160 barrier because, well, the more weight I lose, the better it is for our organizations and the better it is for my health as well. So thank you for all your support and encouragement with the mental health walk and with our fundraiser. We really appreciate it. Um, Also, Kids and Cups, happy Pride Month. It's Pride Month. So let your rainbow freak flag fly. And if it happens not to be a freak flag, that's fine too. But vanilla is a flavor too. But hey, yes, let your pride flag fly, kids and cubs. It's a beautiful month. Acceptance, diversity, tolerance, inclusion, peace, love, equality, equity, all that good stuff. We celebrate it, we support it, we promote it because none of us are free unless all of us are free, right? So we celebrate Pride, and well, we still know that even in 2026, despite the fact that we have rights, there is a large group of people trying to suppress those rights, some of them in elected office, some of them in positions of great power, like Danielle Smith, who keeps on attacking transgender children. We can't have that, of course. So we need to let our community know because somewhere in Alberta, in a small town, there is a kid out there or a young adult, teenager, who, despite all the acceptance that there is in the nation, who believes that they are the only one, or and don't know where to go. They're struggling. They're fearing coming out. They are fearing living their authentic lives and being their authentic selves. And that not just kids, there's still a lot of adults, despite the fact that we have all this acceptance that don't feel that they cannot be themselves in whatever situations that they are in. So, we need to, we've done a good job over the decades making our way to where we are in terms of acceptance, but there's still more work to do. There's still, so long as that there's a kid out there who believes that they're the only one and they're afraid of saying it, or they fear that violence of any kind, whether it be psychological, emotional, physical, would happen to them if they were just themselves, then we've got work to do. So hopefully, yeah, I know that the members of the DamFam clearly are very inclusive and kind and generous and welcoming because, well, I mean, I just need to look at how you treat me and the love and the care that you give me. So just asking that you spread it around a little more to other people this month who might be needing it. Because of course, whenever you say Gay Pride Month, then or Happy Rainbow Pride Month or whatever we want to call it today. There's also a whole other faction for them. It's where it is unhappy. Let's try to make everybody Rainbow Unhappy Month as well, or triggered by Rainbow Month. So they seem to run concurrently every year for some reason. So, so hopefully, kids and cubs, you've got a little more of that love and acceptance within you to share a little further and wider this particular month. Um, let's get into it, kids and cubs. Kitten Carol gotta laugh at it. The vanilla is a flavor too. Well, it is. Rather yummy too. I see that you have been very active on the chat this morning. So let's do a little magic mirror. We don't usually do that. We haven't done that in too long. So Kit Elaine is with us today. Kit Uncovers with us. Good morning. We get Kit Tavi G with us also, saying good morning to everyone. So lovely to see you here. Let's see what else. Who else is here with us this morning? A little bit of a later start, so we might have some not usual faces, which would be nice to say hello to. Kit Jillian is here saying good morning, and good morning to you. I return it. We have Kit Linda M here. Good morning. Finally, I apologize. I know, but thank you for being with us. Um, who else do we have here in the chat? Going through. Did I miss anybody? Surely there's more people here. Going through. Oh, here's a new name. Tella the Warden Mavia. Well, hello. Welcome to the Beaver Lodge. Yes. Have you seen the ambassador post? Yes, we have. Since we are talking about, by the way, let me finish my hello. Welcome to the Beaver Lodge. If this is your first time here, or if you're relatively new here, pull up a log, make yourself comfortable. Hope you find something you like here and stay a while, please, and tell your friends. We did see the ambassador post, unfortunately, and this is not a good thing. It goes with the theme of the show, of course. But look, he's even got Brian Lilly being making an interesting comment, an uncharacteristically pro-Canada comment. But of course, we got news that Canada dipped into a technical recession for the first time since 2020 on Friday, which prompted Mango Madness, south of us, to post the headline from Bloomberg and then a tweet that says 51st state. And of course, Ambassador Doucheface. I have to remember to say doucheface and not the other one because, well, we don't want to. We want to be able to monetize our videos. Let's put it that way. But yeah, posted it, and of course, if I remember correctly, Ambassador Hoekstra is the guy that told us that this kind of talk had stopped. And then we knew it hadn't, of course. And then Donald Trump proved that it didn't. And he's still persisting. So once again, Ambassador Doucheface letting us know that everything he has to say should be ignored because he clearly does not have the ear of the president. Because Hoekstra told us that this was over. And clearly it is not. Brian Lilly. This is an odd way to conduct diplomacy. Trump may have just been trolling Carney over the recession. Ambassador Hoekstra posting this is poking Canadians in the eye, though. He was getting decent press of his trip to Quebec City. I expect that will change today. Yeah. Listen, he's a jerk. He got kicked out of the Netherlands for a reason, right? I mean, this is foreign interference. It's just foreign interference. He did it in the Netherlands. It got him kicked out. He did it here. He should be kicked out. In fact, there's a petition going on. Petition ourcommons.ca, petition E7124. I will put it up for you here in the chat for you. That specifically asks for we, the undersigned residents of Canada, call upon the House of Commons to formally review the conduct of U.S. Ambassador Pete Hoekstra. Should the review find that Ambassador Hoekstra's actions are inconsistent with diplomatic protocol or detrimental to Canada's interests, the Government of Canada take appropriate diplomatic measures, including the possible request for his recall. Now, again, my personal position is that probably won't happen. And if we do that, that's simply going to antagonize the United States. Donald Trump will just send another person, another clone, to do the same thing. So, I mean, we have the devil that we know with this one, the devil we know with him, emphasis on devil. And, a bit of an exercise in futility in one way, and it won't really change anything even if we ditched him. But yes, by any stretch of the imagination, this is a person that should be gone from Canada. But the problem is that he's performing for an audience of one, and he's doing exactly the job he was sent here to do, to sow division, to find, in particularly, the premiers. Hello, Danielle. I'm looking at you. Um, who would be willing to either be quislings or useful idiots, and be the spot at which they can drive in the thin edge of the wedge. And Hoekstra is doing that. He's actually doing that rather masterfully, if not obnoxiously. So this is part of the plan. Again, when the Prime Minister said they want to break us so that they can own us, that this is what Hoekstra is doing. So anything that he says cannot be trusted, cannot be believed, and you know, clearly, as we see here, when he tells us that the United States loves us, well, we don't need that kind of love. When Jamil Giovanni brings back a message that the United States loves us, we don't need that kind of love. When Pierre PoiliOVER takes a visit to the United States where he meets with absolutely no one who has anything to do in Washington, anyone who has anything to do with Washington or any power in Washington, because, well, over there, as Mickey Jurich taught us in their column, that over there he's viewed as the apple munching guy who lost, and therefore nobody takes him seriously. But he also has no contacts because his organization is so insular and doesn't take any advice from anyone whatsoever. There you go, right? This is what you get. That's what you get. So yeah, the United States is being a dick again. It's a day that ends in Y. Moving on. I'm sorry. I just can't get worked up about these things anymore. I can't. It just is. I have a thing with energy vampires where they're just not. I have no time for them, and that's clearly what is going on here. So not today, Satan. Not today. I'm just going to move on. But yeah, it's still happening. Still happening. All right, let's see. Who else do we have here with us this morning? So we said hello to Tala. Is that Tala? Yes, I did get that right. Okay. Who else do we have? Kit Nona Carol. Hello. Good morning. Kit Saucy. Good morning to you as well. The Breens. Hello. Lovely to see you. Kit Nona Carol saying happy Pride. Indeed, indeed. And it is going to be a happy one this year. I have a good feeling. Kit Laurie is with us. Hello, dear one. Glad that you're here. We have Kit Leslie with us, Leslie G. That's also a new name for us, saying hello, folks. Hello. Hope you are doing well. Who else do we have with us here in the chat? Kit Cassie is with us. Good morning. Lovely to see you. Please say hello to the cowboy for us. Give him a big hug on our behalf. Kit Tavi G is here. Wow. Yes. Bocce is fun. I don't know if petanque and bocce are the same thing. I'd have to look that up. But fairly similar. And being someone that is a curler, there are certain similarities between the sports, which makes it such that I have a little bit of a predisposition of being a little more skilled than I should probably be as a beginner. I still lost though, just to let you know. By the way, Kit Vim is with us. Hello. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Lovely to see you as well. Who's Kit Bucky is with us. Hey, there you go. There's Kit U. There you go. See, we have somebody joining us from Vancouver because we got to start a little later. Hi, nice to see you. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Who else do we have? Wow, there's been a lot of chat here. Deb is at it once again, isn't it? All right, I think that's everyone we have today. So thank you so much for joining us. Okay, today we are going to talk about, of course, the fact that we had that economic news. There's a lot of things going on. I'm going to talk about principally three conservative leaders, and we have a fourth one debuting because the BC Conservatives have picked Carrie Lynn Findlay as their leader in British Columbia. So we'll have a little bit about that too, if we can fit that all in today. Uh, but let's see. Uh, since we're talking about Pride Month, actually, you know what? Let's just, I'm going to keep the order. I was going to change the order, but I'll keep the order. A couple of announcements. The installation of Canada's 31st Governor General will be broadcast live on June 8th, and you can watch it at Canadian Heritage, Canadian Heritage's YouTube channel starting at 10 a.m. on that day. So there's a little, if you're, I don't know if we'll do a watch party for that, but that event is taking place. We also have some news from the Canadian press that Canada Post workers have voted to accept a new contract. This is some positive news because this has been going on for a while. In fact, it says here, according to the Canadian press, that postal workers have given the thumbs up to a new contract, casting their ballots overwhelmingly to approve a tentative agreement after more than 2 years of labor strife. The union, representing some 55,000 Canada Post employees, said Monday that more than 4 in 5 voted in favor of the 5-year deal, which includes wage increases of 6.5% and 3% in the first 2 years, and it also locks in hikes that match the annual inflation rate in years 3 through 5, on top of enhanced benefits and a weekend parcel delivery model. About 86% of rural and suburban mail carriers voted to accept the contract, and 89% of urban workers gave it the green light, according to the Canadian Union of Postal Workers. The parties will soon sign the agreement, which expires on January 31st, 2029. The deal marks the denouement of a drawn-out saga of collective bargaining and rotating strikes amid a push to overhaul the Crown Corporation's business model in the face of declining letter mail and mounting financial losses, which topped $5 billion between 2018 and 2025. The union and Canada Post had sparred over wages and structural changes to the postal service, with workers taking to the picket line repeatedly throughout the negotiations. But both sides agreed not to launch any strikes or lockouts while the 6-week ratification vote takes place. About 60% of the union board endorsed the proposed collective agreement, saying it ensures job security, but the union's president had asked members to reject it, arguing it rolls back rights and compensation. Quote, "We still have our work cut out for us to win the fights ahead, prepare for the next round of bargaining, and mobilize against the government's attack on our public postal service. We all have to regroup and unite in our struggle," said President Jan Simpson in a bulletin to members on Monday. In a statement, Canada Post CEO Doug Ettinger said he was pleased with the outcome and that the new deal offers stability and a path, quote, "to restore confidence in the postal system." While the process was challenging, these negotiated agreements recognize that Canada Post needs to change. More than 4 in 5 workers in the union voted in favor of the 5-year deal, which, well, actually, I don't know why they're repeating that somewhere in the story. I guess this must have been an update of a previous story, and they forgot to take that paragraph out. Let's see. And then it says, of course, the road to ratification had been a long one. In December 2024, the federal government asked the Canadian Industrial Relations Board to step in to quash a month-long strike and struck an industrial inquiry commission to determine a path forward. That probe, led by William Kaplan, made a series of recommendations that were later adopted and rolled out in a suite of sweeping changes to Canada Post's mandate. Announced in September, the overhaul lifted a moratorium on community mailbox conversions, authorizing the mail carrier to convert the remaining 4 million addresses that still receive door-to-door delivery. The government also announced an end to the freeze on rural post office closures. Some locations are now surrounded by suburban subdivisions that has been in place since 1994, covering close to 4,000 outlets. I'm always still confused about the idea of stopping door-to-door delivery and building these community mailboxes all over the place, and just like wondering if maybe it would have been better just to have door-to-door delivery 2 days a week or something of the sort, because there is, an element with door-to-door delivery, Canada Post, where particularly for seniors, might be older, when the Canada Post person knows that a senior lives there and sees that the mail hasn't been picked up for a while, that might be you know, a way to check in. Sometimes, senior citizens might be speaking to their postal delivery person, and uh, when things happen with health, especially if they're alone, they can be someone who places a phone call to ensure that that there's a wellness check or something of the sort. So there's more about door-to-door delivery on a daily basis than just the delivery, right? There's a extra community element here that's going to be lost. So I always wondered if it might have been better just to keep door-to-door delivery, but just on a reduced schedule, rather than paying all the money for the infrastructure required, to manufacture, build, purchase whatnot, and install these mailboxes, community mailboxes. But that's the decision that has been made. On Monday, Procurement Minister Joel Lightbound said the agreement marked a milestone for the Crown Corporation. Quote, "This is an important moment for workers, for Canada Post, and for the millions of Canadians and businesses who rely on a stable and reliable postal service every day," he said in an emailed statement. On Friday, the Postal Service reported that it had lost 205 million before taxes in the first quarter of the year as it moves forward with the overhaul. Last month, the federal government handed 673 million to Canada Post to keep the money-bleeding mail service afloat for the current fiscal year. That amount was carried over from the roughly 1 billion Ottawa authorized in a massive funding top-up earlier this year. It also followed last year's initial 1.03 billion cash injection, which failed to sustain the Postal Service past early February 2026. So yes, hopefully this announcement and labor, the labor piece that will have been purchased after a pretty long fight will also help Canada Post on its way to being solvent again. But us also remember that Canada Post is a service; it is not a business, and a service. While you hope that a service at least breaks even, if in the case like the LCBO, it happens to generate a little profit, even the better. But that is not the goal of a service, right? It's to do something that nobody else will do, right? When you think about Canada Post, there are places, there are still places in Canada to which Amazon will not deliver, nor FedEx nor UPS. You need Canada Post for that, right? It is a service, and services, while they need to be run efficiently and in the best interest, of course, of the taxpayer, especially if they're a crown corporation, they're not necessarily designed, or their purpose is not necessarily to generate a profit. So, but hey, hopefully there will be more good news coming up as a result of of these changes in the future, and the news that we get about Canada Post will be a little a little more joyous. See that. A couple of things to be looking out for uh, today. Is there anything that, oops, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Uh, let's try this instead. There we go. That's a little better. Let's see here. Um, Conservative leader Pierre PoiliOVER had called on, we'll get into the story, the government to call an emergency parliamentary debate with regards to what he is calling the liberal recession. Of course, Pierre never misses an opportunity for branding and misinformation, but there you go. And well, that's been denied. The Speaker of the House turned around and said, "Yeah, but no, we will not be doing that today." Um, Now, that doesn't mean that there is no opportunity for Pierre PoiliOVER to keep going on that, of course. But yes, let me see here if I can get a note from CTV here. This is Abigail Bimman, who says that Conservative leader Pierre PoiliOVER's request for an emergency debate on the state of Canada's economy was denied by the Speaker of the House Monday afternoon. PoiliOVER rose in the House Monday afternoon to formally make that call. Quote, "The Prime Minister couldn't be bothered to say a single word about this emergency since he learned of it on Friday morning," PoiliOVER said. Of course, PoiliOVER was the first out of the gate to say something about it because, well, whenever there's bad news for Canada, well, there he is with a smile willing to share it. But he says he's going to stand for Canada. Uh-huh. This is an emergency in the lives of people who have empty fridges, empty stomachs, and empty bank accounts, and they expect the Prime Minister who promised that he was a great economic genius to get in here and explain how we managed to be the only leader in G7 to cause a recession. Of course, again, Pierre making the rhetorical logical fallacy that correlation is causation. Just because someone happens to be Prime Minister at the time, that something economically unfavorable happens, does not necessarily mean that the person that is the leader at the time caused it. But Pierre hopes that you're not smarter than a fifth grader and can't figure out that just because two things happen to be occurring at the same time doesn't mean that one caused the other. Speaker of the House Francis Scarpellegia denied the request. Quote, "I'm not satisfied that this request meets the requirements of the standing orders at this time." Well, of course it doesn't, because everything that Pierre does, you have to remember, is first for marketing purposes, not to actually provide a useful service or useful representation to Canadian people. CTV News reached out to the Speaker's office for context on the decision, but did not receive an immediate response. On Tuesday morning, a spokesperson provided CTV News with a lengthy response explaining the context around how the Speaker makes decisions around emergency debates. Well, first of all, you'd have to think that this is an emergency. While the Speaker has, quote, considerable discretion, certain criteria must be weighed. The first provided noted the Speaker has to decide if the issue is a, quote, well, there you go, a genuine emergency and could not be brought before the House within a reasonable time by other means. PoiliOVER repeated similar criticism about the Prime Minister's absence at both a morning press conference and during question period. You're probably going to be hearing about Pierre PoiliOVER talking about this day after day after day, because finally he believes he has an issue, even though he doesn't really, but he believes he has one, that he is going to keep hammering on until such time as there is either a revision of the numbers that deny this, or the next quarter comes in and it turns out that we're out of recession. Because here, the danger for Pierre PoiliOVER doing this is if he says right now, like he says, this is a full-blown liberal recession. It is not. But if he says this is a full-blown liberal recession and 3 months from now we get the next quarter's GDP numbers and they're good, well, that would be the shortest-lived full-blown recession in Canadian history now, wouldn't it? And that would make Pierre look kind of stupid, but Pierre doesn't care what he looks like, obviously. And as David Clement Haga says about Danielle Smith, also applies to Pierre PoiliOVER. He's not a particularly deep thinker, and he only says whatever applies in the moment. In the moment, we have a technical recession, so Pierre is pouncing on that, and then like a dog on a bone, like a greedy kid on a Smartie, and num 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 num, eating that up and making as much hay as he can, until such time as that's not the reality anymore, which won't stop him from claiming it anyway. Pierre PoiliOVER keeps on wanting us to believe that Mark Carney's tenure as the governor of the Bank of England led to the worst inflation possible. And if you actually go look at the data, it was probably the lowest inflation the UK had in about 30 years when Mark Carney was there. Pierre just makes stuff up. The difference between Pierre and Danielle Smith is that every time Pierre makes a pronouncement like this that's just completely on its face nonsensical, it just makes him look, confirms why people didn't vote for him. Whereas for Danielle Smith, for some reason, it seems to work for her. So might be working for her a little less, as I believe Greg McEachern had commented on Power and Politics on Friday, I believe, given that she had the cushion of what she said mostly applying in her own province and to a base of her party that seems to be 57% separatist. Now that things that she's saying are having a bit more of a national impact, and we have a Premier Wapkanu, again, that is willing to metaphorically bop her on the nose with a rolled up newspaper when she misinforms. She's not, she doesn't seem to be accustomed to that level of scrutiny and pushback to her comments, and seems a little, seems to be flailing a little bit as a result. So we'll see how that works for her too, if that strategy keeps working for her. But for Pierre, talking for the current nanosecond, or to get through the current nanosecond, is not working for him. Hasn't been working for him for a long time, but yet he keeps on doing it. Oh well. Carney has not taken questions from the media or the House since Friday. Report from Statistics Canada showed a slight contraction for two straight quarters, meeting the technical definition of a recession. After Poilievre's debate request on Monday, Conservative MP Gérard Deltel stood in the House on a question of privilege to accuse the Liberal MP of, quote, of deliberately misleading the House when he said Canada is not in a recession. During question period Friday, Liberal MP Carlos Letao repeated that statement twice. Carlos Letao, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was a minister of finance uh, in the Quebec provincial government at one time, if I remember correctly. Yes, he was a minister of finance for Quebec from 2014 to 2018. Uh, Quote, Mr. Speaker, I will repeat once more that Canada is not in a recession. That's not what Statistics Canada has said, but our economy is under threat from the tariffs. We are the only G7 country next to the US, and we depend on trade with the US. That is the issue, but we have a plan, Letao said, according to the English translation of his French comments. Reached by phone Monday night about the Deltel accusation, Letao told CTV News he stands by his original comments. Letao, a former Quebec finance minister, added that among economists, many believe there's, quote, no such thing as a technical recession. He drew a medical comparison. You don't technically have pneumonia. You have it or you don't. The federal finance minister's press secretary backed up Letao. John Fragos told CTV News he doesn't, quote, think there was any mischaracterization. Fragos pointed, quote, to the scores of economists who say you need to take into account more than just top-level GDP numbers before declaring a recession, as well as testimony from Bank of Canada's Senior Deputy Governor Carolyn Rogers on Monday. Quote, I think we need to be careful not to put too much weight on any one indicator, Rogers told a parliamentary committee. It meets one definition, maybe, but that doesn't tell the full story, Fragos said about whether Canada is in a recession. And we'll have a little bit more on that, but over the course of the show. But yes, that motion was, or that move to try and again use the House of Commons backdrop for the purposes of marketing and generating clips so that you can get people's donations and data. That has, of course, been denied. Oh well. As we all knew he would, just like every single one of his motions that he presents rather than bills, because writing up a bill would be work. A motion can be drawn up in 30 minutes and then have it debate and discussed and then have parties vote it down and then he can like run this, oh my God, these terrible, awful liberals voted it down, send us money. That's the whole thing. That's the shtick right now from the conservatives. So ever more delving into political irrelevancy by just saying whatever presses the outrage button, no matter how ridiculous, untrue, untethered to the facts. Right? When he happens to have a little nugget handed to him, like a technical recession, that he can, or wrap something around, he will gleefully, which is also really weird because why would the leader of opposition, who just last week stated that given the threat that Danielle Smith has imposed upon us with a referendum, saying that he would stand for Canada, um, why should that person be delivering messages upon learning that we might be in a technical recession with a big smile on his face and gleeful and seemingly happy that it has happened? That is weird. Kid Bucky here stating Prime Minister Mark Carney was clear since the leadership campaign economic difficulties were coming. A technical recession is exactly what he warned about. Of course. Of course. Kit Tavi G. Regardless of the recession designation, it's important for the government to recognize that people are struggling with the cost of living. That is indeed true. Nona Carol, it's our own fault to depend on the USA. It takes time to move 50 years of trade. That's what Trump's plan was. Economic restraint so the country hurts until they beg, like he's doing to Cuba. Mm-hmm. And that's one of those things, right? Where, in that quote there, Mark Carney is the only one to, uh, yeah, France doesn't have it, Germany doesn't, yeah, because of all the G7 nations, Canada by far is the country that is the most integrated with the United States. It is the country that is by far the most affected by the steel and lumber and aluminum tariffs. It is the country out of all of them that is having its auto sector decimated. It's like for Pierre's statement, because again, Pierre likes simple statements for people that he believes are simple. Um, Pierre's statement uh, assumes that everything about our relationship with the United States is equal to the relationship of every other G7 country with the United States, and that we are somehow not um, extraordinarily more tethered to the US economy than the other six. And he knows this because in a press conference, actually, that he had on Friday, um, he says, why is Mark Carney the only one who can't do it? And then later on in the question, he actually answers that question by stating all of this stuff, but as it applies to something else. So he knows the answer. He knows why. He's just lying because he uses the appropriate answer to that question to attack Carney on other stuff. So if it's true for the other stuff, then it should be true for this as well. If that reality exists for situation B, the reality exists. So it also affects situation A, but not in Pierre's world. Mm-mm. Oh my God. Wow. Anyway, um, taking a little other look here, other things that might be happening today. So, according to this here, it says that even though the emergency debate was denied, according to iPolitics here, it says he and his party will still get the chance to challenge the prime minister to defend his record, courtesy of a non-binding motion. So you can't get an emergency debate. So, well, they presented a motion again. And the motion, of course, that if adopted would have the House of Commons call on Carney to, quote, immediately present a plan to reverse all the economic policies of the Liberal government, which have given Canada the G7's worst economy. Yeah, what are the odds that motion's going to pass? Reverse all the economic policies of your government. It's not a serious motion. It's marketing written with a poison pill in it, designed specifically to get the thing rejected, not only by Liberals, but probably by every other party. And he's going to run around and say, oh my God, look at the Liberals, and send me money. Debate, so that'll happen around 10 a.m. It's about 7 minutes from now, Eastern Time. Debate on the motion, which would also have the House recognize, quote, that the Liberal Prime Minister has given Canada the only economy in recession in the G7, worst household debt in the G7, worst housing costs in the G7, and the second highest unemployment in the G7, a third higher than the United States, is set to get underway this morning, continue through the day, and go to a vote tomorrow afternoon. For his part, Carney is not expected to take part in the cross aisle back and forth. As per his itinerary, he won't be in his front and center seat in the chamber to field questions this afternoon. Pierre PoiliOVER keeps on picking these data points. He cherry picks these data points, but also along with these data points, we need to remember that Canada has a way better inflation rate than the United States. Canada has much less debt. Canada has lower 10-year and 30-year bond yields. Canada also, in 2025 at least, the number 2 country for direct foreign investment. That's not negligible. Another thing, Pierre PoiliOVER seems to have not been eager to pop up and talk about. Recently, it came out as news. For some reason, had nothing to say about this, but on May 20th, Denise Paglanawan, I'm not sure for which for the Financial Post, had an article that states Canada is the world's most attractive market for infrastructure investment, according to a poll. Canada has surpassed the United States, emerging as the most attractive market for infrastructure investment, according to a survey of leading investors in the sector. Global Infrastructure Investment Association's recent poll places Canada at the top of its rankings thanks to a series of recent announcements by the Canadian government. This comes after Prime Minister Mark Carney's government made clear commitments to strengthening and expanding Canada's core infrastructure, it said in a press release. Quote, Canada is making all the right noises when it comes to intentions to attract private capital into building, maintaining, and improving the nation's infrastructure with ambitious goals for how and where it will raise this capital, said John Phillips, the association's chief executive. Canada surpassed European economic powerhouse Germany, which now sits in second place in the rankings, as well as the US for the first time. For the first time. Phillips said his group works with Canadian infrastructure investors all over the world who have been some of the most active in the sectors for decades. Just 2 years ago, Canada made up only 3% of capital deployed by its members, but it appears that is certainly about to change, he added. The group said its members, who manage nearly $3 trillion in infrastructure assets combined, are surveyed on a biannual basis to gauge sector attractiveness, challenges, and deal flow across the world's biggest infrastructure markets. One of the association's large-scale investor members noted Canada currently appears to be, quote, having a moment within the world of infrastructure and major national projects, it said. The report highlighted Carney's, quote, nation-building program and his government's announcement of a new sovereign wealth fund, which will partially be used to co-fund infrastructure projects alongside private sector partners. The government initially committed $25 billion over 3 years for the fund. Our latest survey of members has clearly shown that recent announcements are creating global interest, said Phillips. If the government can continue to send clear policy signals like reforming airport governance and nuclear innovation, they can convert this investor interest into real deals and capital flow. Canada is also looking to attract foreign investors with the stated aim of raising $1 trillion in new capital from external sources and the first ever Canada Investment Summit kicking off later this fall, the report said. Much of the capital would be generated in the prospect that Canada will privatize some of its major airports, it said. It added that the country's intention to become a nuclear-led energy superpower is also an attractive notion, and by working with experienced infrastructure investors, Canada can manage costs, speed up deployment, and reinforce its global leadership in clean energy. So, good news there on that front. There may be a little bit more as well in a story from the Globe and Mail from another journalist who had tackled the subject. This is from James Bradshaw, who's the institutional investing reporter for the Globe and Mail. Here, this one says Canada tops the list of the most attractive countries for investing in infrastructure for the first time in a survey of major global investors, suggesting Ottawa's push to boost the country's profile is attracting attention. This at the same time that Pierre is calling this a full-blown liberal recession. Canada ranks ahead of the United States, Mexico, Germany, and several European and Nordic countries in the latest semi-annual survey by the Global Infrastructure Investor Association, or the GIIA. The country's outlook, quote, improved materially, according to the survey results, signaling that investors are responding well to the federal government's plan to launch major projects that can improve Canada's economic growth and productivity over time. The US slipped to third place in the rankings behind second place Germany, thanks to rising concerns over its war in Iran and an uptick in inflation in March and uncertainty over the outcome of midterm elections later this year. The survey showed improved outlooks for Britain and most European countries. The survey had 28 respondents that collectively manage US $1 trillion of infrastructure assets. Those include major Canadian pension funds, Brookfield Asset Management, JP Morgan Chase and Company, CBRE Group, and Macquarie Asset Management. One unnamed respondent cited in the survey said Canada appears to, quote, be having a moment in the infrastructure sector. Individual survey responses are anonymized. The GIIA's members represent nearly $2.2 trillion of combined infrastructure assets. Quote, and then I mentioned, I said that quote already. Let's see here. A report based on the survey results says the establishment of a federal major projects office to oversee and fast-track projects in the national interest, significant federal funding allocated to infrastructure investment, and renewed provincial commitments all supported investors' improved outlook for Canada. They also cited the plans to launch a $25 billion sovereign wealth fund. It says here, in a section of the survey focused on perceived barriers to investment, Canada ranked better than the US, Britain, and Europe on political stability and has the most attractive regulatory regime in relative terms. But Canada scored worse on, quote, the lack of visibility of its pipeline of infrastructure. Let's try that again. But Canada scored worse on the, quote, lack of visibility of its pipeline. Oh, okay. Sorry. I got tripped up on a turn of phrase that made it sound like this was not that there was a typo, but it's not actually a typo. I was just putting the emphasis at the wrong place in the sentence. But Canada scored worst on the lack of visibility of its pipeline of infrastructure projects, suggesting that investors are still looking for proof that Canada will deliver on its lofty promises. So there you go. So good news for us with regard to that. So let's go to the actual reporting on what was said on that day. According to Abby Hughes from CBC News, Canada's economy contracted in the first quarter on an annualized basis by a slim margin, marking the second consecutive quarter of such decline, which some would call a technical recession. Statistics Canada said real gross domestic product fell 0.1% on an annualized basis in the first 3 months of this year. 0.1% it fell. That comes after a downwardly revised contraction of 1% in the 45. 2 consecutive quarters of contraction in economic growth is termed a technical recession. However, on a quarterly basis, the first quarter of GDP was unchanged against a decline in the fourth quarter of last year, closely escaping the definition of a technical recession on a quarter-on-quarter basis. Let me repeat that. However, on a quarterly basis, the first quarter GDP was unchanged against a decline in the fourth quarter of last year, closely escaping the definition of a technical recession. Escaping the definition of a technical recession on a quarter-on-quarter basis. The annualized GDP figure scales up the quarterly figure to show what GDP would be if the economy kept the same pace for the whole year, whereas the quarterly figure looks at the sheer number. So here, I'm going to it's going to show you this graph. I'm going to replace that, show with this one. So we have a graph here in the report that shows us how the economy has been doing. Now, let's see if I can make this slightly bigger. There we go. How does that look for you? To take a look there. That's a little better. So here we have the last 4 quarters. We had a minus 1% in the second quarter of 2025, which was bolstered by a 1.9% in Q3, a minus 1% in Q4. So basically, this levels out at minus 1 for these 3 quarters, minus 0.1 for these 3 quarters, and then again a minus 0.1 here. So just to say, it's below, right? Now, the quarterly change with which they were talking about, which makes it so that this does not meet the definition. If you look here, we even out here. We basically break even. And here, the 1% ended up being minus 0.2 if we're looking at the quarterly change. We're looking at an increase of 0.5 and another 0.2. So if we're looking at quarterly change for the last 4 quarters, right, we're actually up 0.1%. But if you look on annualized change for the 4 quarter, because we're down 0.2%. Now, these numbers are so close to the 0 bar that it's, is it not? It's not great growth, clearly. But as the economists have told us, there's more to declaring a recession than just this number, right? We have, again, favorable inflation, favorable inflation, favorable investment climate, better bond yields than the United States, better debt situation than the United States, better credit rating than the United States, and in most any other country in the world, actually. So, and again, we're taking steps to do things while at the same time being the country that is probably the most affected by Donald Trump's tariffs. We are, I mean, he's doing this to the entire world, but we are the country he is trying to break. So despite all of that and all those headwinds, plus, having to deal with what's the effects on the economy of the war on Ukraine that Russia has started, the war on Gaza that Israel has started, and the war on Iran that both the United States and Iran has started. We're dealing with a lot, right? That type of performance, yeah, you know, while not great when you're considering the mess that the world is in, um, we're not doing that badly, actually. We had predicted way worse, way worse. We had foreseen way worse coming overall. And so, we're managing, but not great. The last time Canada was in a technical recession was during the start of the pandemic in 2025. Before that, it was during the oil shock at the beginning of 2015. That was the second recession that Stephen Harper got us into. If you remember, we had the big recession in 2008 that Stephen Harper and Mark Carney got us out of. Of course, Pierre wants us to believe that every decision that Mark Carney has made has been terrible, but they loved Mark Carney when he was the governor of Bank of Canada, when he was appointed by Stephen Harper, and yeah, they got us out of and we got out of that recession. And Jim Flaherty was making those comments, who was the finance minister at the time. Gee, Mark Carney gave us a lot of help with that, and then well, now that Jim Flaherty is dead, well, then you have Pierre PoiliOVER claiming, Mark Carney is trying to take credit for Jim Flaherty's work. No, Jim Flaherty himself praised Mark Carney for the work that he did, what he did to contribute. And what he did over here was so good that the world noticed. And he was hired then to be the first non national governor of the Bank of England, where there too, um, he prevented the UK from becoming a much bigger mess than it was going to, because they had politicians at the time, once again conservative, who decided to gamble the finances of the nation uh, on Brexit, and it didn't work out for them. And during that time, let's remember that the government of the UK went through 6 prime ministers in about a decade. And for the time that Mark Carney was there, he was basically the constant that was keeping the economy of that nation stable. It wasn't the conservative leadership at the time. Very important to note. At that time, there were 2 consecutive quarters of decline, both on an annualized basis and a quarterly basis, Statistics Canada said. That was 2015. Given the difference between the annualized and non-annualized figures, BMO chief economist Douglas Porter said whether the technical recession label fits will be a matter of debate. Quote, he points out that the dip in the first quarter is very small, meaning it could be very easily revised away. That's another thing that happens. Initial numbers come up, and then they're pretty solid, but there are some lagging indicators that come in later, and numbers get revised. Now that can be upward or downward, but you know again, if we're looking at -1, uh, so let's look at the number here: -1%, +1.9%, -1%, -0.1%. Um, Clearly, we're talking about an economy that is wildly fluctuating from quarter to quarter, depending on what is being thrown at us. Um, we seem to be treading water, but again, if we are going from -1 to -0.1, that is an indication of an economy that is improving despite the second quarter. Uh, the annualized change in the second quarter comes in, sorry, the first quarter of 2026 comes in at just under zero. It is improvement. Um, Let's see, what else do we have here? An advanced estimate from StatsCan also shows that growth in April bounced back to 0.4%, which Porter says is also a major glimmer of hope. Regardless, there are some clear signs of struggle in the economy that can't be sugar-coated. Quote, it's quite possible this, could be a statistical mirage, but what I don't think is a debate is that we've basically seen the next to no growth over the past year. That is true, however. And that, of course, continued in the first quarter of this year. Porter noticed that a big dip in government spending, government capital investment fell 2.5% in the first quarter, explains some of the change. In the bigger picture, Porter said the past year of weakness can be pinned mostly on the trade war. But again, Pierre PoiliOVER wants you to believe that this is liberal caused and that Mark Carney is another failure of Mark Carney. The Bank of Canada has said that the growth this year is likely to be at 1.2%, down from 1.7% last year. It will update its projections in July. The first quarter GDP was negatively impacted by a high level of imports into the country, but that was largely offset by a high accumulation of inventories, the statistics agency said. Household spending, however, was a bright spot that added to the GDP, with Canadians spending more on financial services and food. Business capital and spending more on food is, food inflation has been up there. I'm not sure that necessarily means that's a good thing. I'll reserve judgment on that one. Business capital investment also fell 0.7% in the first quarter of 2026, its fifth consecutive quarterly decline, StatsCan said. Dan Kelly, president of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, says that tracks as many small business owners he represents have put in investments on hold to uncertainty. Let me try that sentence again. I'm having trouble today. Dan Kelly, president of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, says that tracks as many small business owners he represents have put investments on hold due to uncertainty in the economy and rising costs from things like energy, which has spiked thanks to the war on Iran. Most businesses, quote, are basically in a holding pattern. They're treading water, hoping for brighter days. He adds the confidence in the economy that's needed to invest simply isn't there among business owners. While markets are still predicting the Bank of Canada will raise interest rates before the end of the year, Porter says today's bad GDP news should make that less likely. Quote, even if we determine that this is just a recession in name only, the fact that we have seen declines in GDP in 3 of the past 4 quarters, I think washes away any argument for rate hikes, Porter said. So that's what we have here on that front. Now let's see if there's if I find anything from Statistics Canada that might give us some further insights, I should say here. Don't think so at the moment. I think that's pretty much the basic stuff here. Yep, I don't think that there's anything additional here. If there is, I'll pour through the data a little more and bring it to you on another show. But right now, seems pretty decent here. So yeah, clearly not the best performance, and we would like better, but also not necessarily terrible considering what it is that I've been experiencing. Now, thanks to Elaine, sent us something that was very useful to our analysis from the Canadian manufacturers and exporters. And this gives you an overview of the Canadian economy that is completely antithetical to what Pierre PoiliOVER has been trying to get us to believe. It says here that the Canadian economy posted a third consecutive month of solid growth in May, driven higher by a surge in manufacturing output and a modest recovery in the struggling and construction sector. God, I'm having trouble today. The Canadian economy posted a third consecutive month of solid growth in May, driven higher by a surge in manufacturing output and a modest recovery in the struggling construction sector. After sputtering for half a year, the economy is suddenly enjoying an undeniably healthy run. National GDP expanded by about 0.23% in May, equivalent to an annualized increase of about 2.8%. On top of that, GDP estimates for March and April were revised upwards as well. April's growth estimate was increased from a preliminary assessment of 3.1 to 4%, while March's numbers were adjusted from 6.5% to 6.7%. All figures are at annualized rates. This represents the strongest 3-month stretch of economic growth Canada has seen in years. Now, I want you to pay attention to this number for March, because March is still in the first quarter. And those first quarter GDP numbers that Pierre is telling us that came in at minus 0.1%, that Pierre is telling us are awful. And this means that we're in a full-blown recession, and that is liberal caused. And we just read something that said the numbers could be revised upwards. Here it says that March's numbers for GDP were adjusted upwards from 6.5 to 6.7%. Could that adjustment upwards from 6.5 to 6.7%, once it is factored in, change that minus 0.1 to a flat 0? Maybe. It's certainly going to get it closer to it, though. Right? So that's what I mean. You get some lagging numbers that could. But right now we're looking at for the second quarter, which is April, May, and June. And here we're seeing uh, April's growth estimate that came in at 3.1% because was actually 4.4% upwards. Yes, and then in May, 0.23%, which shows an annualized increase of 2.8%. So based on at least April and May, it's going to look like the second quarter numbers for Canada are going to go back into the positive area, which will, again, by Pierre PoiliOVER, framing this right now as a full-blown recession, uh, he's going to look really stupid. He's going to look very, very, very stupid. Uh, let's see, July, August, come September, early September, when numbers for the second quarter come out. But between June and September, however, he's going to run with this. He's going to run with this big lie until he hopes it sticks. But again, March, April, and May represents the strongest 3-month stretch of economic growth Canada has seen in years. Pierre PoiliOVER doesn't want to tell you that part of the story. I'm going to show you another graph here, kids and cubs. I'm so glad that Kit Elaine sent us this article. All right, let's show this. So I'm looking here to make it a little bigger for you. The economic activity is picking up here. Real GDP at annual rates in trillions. Okay, I'm not sure. This is weird. The years on this are not correct. Okay. I'm sorry, kits and cubs. This is my bad. I thought that this was a current data. It is not. It's data from 2018 to 2019. I did not check the data well enough. I had been looking for a publication date on it, and it wasn't written on it, and I just realized that the graphics are from the past. So please reject all that last stuff I said that comes from this particular article. It actually does not apply to the current situation. Now I feel foolish. Should have checked that more carefully. My fault again. But as we know, March, what the economists are telling us is that that first quarter data could still be revised. So we'll be looking for that number come in. And of course, we've got all these announcements and the climate, the foreign direct investment that's improving. And of course, that survey of investors indicating that Canada is going to be, oh, please, Kit Lane, you don't need to apologize. You were trying to be helpful. It was my apology. To me, it was my fault for not vetting that information a little more clearly. Said I was looking for a publication date, and I, again, a little tired, forgot because I couldn't find one, forgot to look at the dates on the graphics because the information was there. That's me. That's on me. That's on me. That's not your fault. I take full responsibility for that. It's up to me to verify the content before I present it to you as a fact, and I didn't do my job well this today. So that this is more than a gentle correction that I'm issuing on myself. This is a slight little spanking. But that does not change the fact, as Douglas Porter from the Bank of Montreal told us, that the numbers for the first quarter could still be revised upwards, and that we might turn out that this is not even, not, I mean, we're already told that this is not even a technical recession, so even less a full-blown one, right? So Pierre is being a little premature here. And again, my apologies for not having vetted that appropriately here. So moving on from that bit, there are other news, however, that could be indicating here that things are indeed getting better. The first one is now, if we had someone like Caroline Levitt, somebody from Canada, would be standing in front of a mic saying, Donald Trump caved. Because according to Reuters, U.S. President U.S. President Donald Trump on Monday signed a proclamation amending his Section 232 national security tariffs on some aluminum, steel, and copper imports, the White House said. The proclamation lowers tariffs on some steel and aluminum derivative products, including certain types of agricultural, machine yard, residential heating, air conditioning, and ventilation equipment to 10 to 15% from 25% previously. Again, we did not have Pierre rushing to a microphone to announce that Mark Carney got a win on trade. Again, might have something to do with Mark Carney, might not, but we will be definitely affected by this positively. And well, I mean, if Mark Carney happening to be prime minister when an alleged technical recession hits means he caused it, then Mark Carney being prime minister when Donald Trump drops tariffs from 25% to 15% on certain types of agricultural machine yard, residential heating, air conditioning, and ventilation equipment, that has to be because Mark Carney caused that too, right? Right? But Pierre has nothing to say about that. It makes mobile industrial equipment such as bulldozers and forklifts subject to a 15% tariff when imported from trade deal countries that are entitled to such treatment, the White House said in a statement. The order also allows foreign companies to qualify for a 10% tariff if their capital equipment includes at least 85% U.S. melted and poured or smelted and cast steel aluminum by weight. The order adds two new categories. However, when Donald Trump gives with the right hand, he steals with the left. The order adds two new categories of steel and aluminum derivative import products that will be subject to 25% duties: steel racks and aluminum lithographic plates. The adjustments will become effective for goods imported or withdrawn from bonded warehouses after 12:01 a.m. Eastern Time on June 8th. The changes will remain in place until December 31st, 2027 to spur near-term investments that will rebuild the nation's industrial base. Someone's in trouble. Also, something that Pierre won't tell us, according to Uday Rana from Global News, Canada is producing and exporting more natural gas to the world and not just to the United States, data from Statistics Canada shows. Overall primary energy production in Canada went up to 2.2 million gigajoules in March, an increase of 0.9% compared to March 2025. In March, Canada produced 775.12 million gigajoules of natural gas, an increase of 5.6% compared to March 2025, with production in British Columbia 13.8% and Alberta 1.2% contributing the most to the increase. Canada's natural gas exports rose 7.4% to 339.7 million gigajoules, while the US was still Canada's biggest customer, buying 282.1 million gigajoules of natural gas in March. It was down 10.8% compared to the same period in 2025. Quote, this was the highest level of exports to countries other than the United States since Canada began exporting liquefied natural gas from Kitimat, British Columbia in July 2025, Statistics Canada said in its report. With crude oil production, I'm having trouble today. While crude oil production only edged up 0.2% to 26.9 million cubic meters, it was the smallest year-over-year increase recorded in 10 months. Crude oil exports, however, went up significantly by 4.2% to 22.5 million cubic meters, the highest level recorded since 2016. These exports got a 5.9% bump in exports by pipeline to the United States as global oil demand surged following the war in Iran. Crude oil exports to non-US countries went up 25.4% to 3.4 million cubic meters. Canada also produced more electricity in March at 58.2 million megawatt hours, an increase of 2.9% compared to March 2025, led largely by an increase in Ontario at 48.7%. Electricity exports to the US jumped 48.8% to 3.1 million megawatt hours compared to March 2025, but we've got nothing they need. ah, so oil and gas and even electricity exports are up. And of course, as we mentioned, in the United States, one of the points of differentiation here having to do with bond yields. Here, according to, is this, let's see, this is a MSN News. Here it says that in the United States, the yields on the 30-year treasuries hit about 5.2% at one point. Last week, we showed you that, threatening to push annual interest expenses towards 2.5 trillion by 2036, up to 13. The refinancing crunch that they have is they have about $13 trillion in maturing debt, which must be rolled over within a year, alongside trillions in new deficit borrowing. This means that policy-wise, that the Fed officials are weighing rate hikes amid sticky inflation, while fiscal experts urge deficit cuts to avert a potential crisis. In late May, 30-year Treasury yields touched 5.2, their highest since 2007, while 10-year yields reached 4.7%. This spike, partly eased by news of a possible Iran peace deal, still leaves yields well above Congressional Budget Office forecasts. Analysts warn that sustained rates at these levels could double the share of federal revenue consumed by interest payments within a decade, making it the second largest budget category after Social Security or defense. Roughly one-third of the $39.3 trillion national debt matures within a year, requiring $12 to $13 trillion in refinancing, plus about $3 trillion in new deficit borrowing. With foreign demand for U.S. bonds weakening, the Treasury may rely more on short-term issuance and indirect Federal Reserve support. Market veteran Peter Schiff warns that this structural supply pressure, not just geopolitics or oil prices, is driving yields higher and could push 30-year rates towards 7% or more. That's way past the danger zone. Danger zone was told to us when I was reading previous articles to you, coming in at 5.5%. April's PCE inflation rose to 3.8%. Ours is at 2.8%, the highest in 3 years, driven partly by energy costs linked to Middle East tensions. Fed officials are split. Some see inflation pressures easing, while others are prepared to hike rates if price growth stays elevated. A peace deal with Iran could lower near-term inflation risk, but economists caution that sticky prices and resilient labor markets may keep rate hike risks alive. And then, of course, when we're talking about the debt servicing, the high debt servicing costs undermine both nationalist and populist economic goals by increasing reliance on foreign creditors and wealthy domestic bondholders. In 2025, over $285 billion in interest payments flowed overseas, with projections for further increases if deficits persist. Analysts argue that reducing deficits through targeted spending cuts, new tariffs, and fraud reduction could bolster U.S. sovereignty and economic resilience. And they do not have the right president for that, because they have a president that managed to find a way to bankrupt casinos, I think 6 times. So cutting spending or spending restraint is definitely not his strong suit. So yeah, or Pierre PoiliOVER wanting us, it's basically the return of Canada's abusive boyfriend, right? A week ago or something like that, he was on TV saying that he was going to stand for Canada in the light in fate, that he was going to take up the mantle of being the MP from Alberta, from the Conservative side, that would fight to make the case for Canada in everything that Danielle Smith is doing. And it has ever since, everything that he said is punching down on Canada and punching down on its leader. Again, I remember Mark Carney saying the United States wants to break us so that we can own us. And Pierre is essentially back to saying that Canada is broken. And of course, it's all Carney's fault. Have a little bit of a clip for you. Again, I'm going to have to say trigger warning, because for those of you who are triggered by the sight and sound of Pierre PoiliOVER's voice, well, I'm sorry. You're going to have to hear it a little bit here. But Pierre here is essentially making a fool of himself in this by wanting to pounce on this immediately making it sound way worse than it is, going against what every economist is saying, uh, ready to declare this. Um, Thank you, Kit Lane, for confirming. Yes, indeed, 6 times. uh, Confirming, saying that we're in a full-blown liberal recession and all of that BS. But I want you to listen to the answers to 2 questions that he's got. I could go into the whole spiel and dramatic stuff that he was saying, accusatory statements that he was saying. He's still trying to work all of them in, that, that every decision that Carney's made has been terrible and all that kind of stuff. And, trying to layer it on and trying to make it all work, which of course it doesn't for him. And again, we have to also remember the overall context, that this is a guy who, in the last federal election, despite having about 2 years or more about to prepare for it, and claiming that he was like this serious policy wonk, um, that he had a costing that got him laughed out of the country and out of every economic circle. And in it, at the last minute, he had to change his pledge to tax cuts, which was more generous than the Liberals at first, to something that was less generous. And he tried to slide it in during that, presented right before debate, a few days before the vote, and hoping that nobody noticed that he performed a bait and switch with regard to his tax relief policy. Here, in this question that he is going to be asked, and I do not know why he does this performative thing. I guess well, clearly he doesn't have a lot of range. That's got to be the only thing. Lack of creativity, lack of imagination, lack of range, or that he just doesn't have anything of his own to offer. So he needs to revert back to the old rhetorical devices or tricks that didn't work for him the first time. But here, he gives an answer to a question on something else. And this is where I've indicated to you before on the show that Pierre PoiliOVER answered his own question about why is Canada the only country in the G7 that seems to be having this economic result. But he applies it to a totally different context. But this is the actual answer in a lot of ways to why Canada is the only country in the G7 to have recorded those, again, provisionally, 2 quarters of a GDP decline, leading Pierre, leading there to be a possible debate on whether or not we are in a technical recession.
Économique depuis une décennie et avait tort sur la taxe carbone.
I'm guessing I wrote the wrong timestamp here, but this is Pierre telling again, saying in French that Mark Carney was wrong about everything.
Sur son support pour l'impression.
Okay, let me see if I can find
monétaire.
The actual clip that I'm looking for that has the proper timestamp, because clearly I noted that wrong again in my fatigue. And once again, I am so sorry, kids and cubs. Jeez. So let's let him. Okay, I think here we might be at. I think I wrote 25 instead of 45. So I'm off by 20 seconds. But still a mistake. Here we go.
Yeah.
So the question here that you can't really hear, but because it was coming from pretty far back, has something to do about what the Prime Minister has done in terms of negotiating some increased trade with China.
Of course not. He won't do anything to make Beijing unhappy. A year after Mark Carney said that China was the single biggest risk to Canada, he claimed that we were going to have a full rupture with the United States.
Okay, that there is a lie. Mark Carney did not claim that we were going to have a full rupture with the United States. He claimed there is a rupture with the United States because the United States decided, as Mark Carney says, as it's its right, to impose tariffs on the world, particularly targeting us, but on the world. Right? Mark Carney did not claim he sought or wanted a rupture. This is the thing that Pierre PoiliOVER keeps on saying and lying about, demonstrably lying about. But that's not the case. There is one. Recognizing that there is a rupture does not mean that you wanted one. Let's keep going.
In favor of a strategic partnership for a new world order with the dictatorship in Beijing.
That is definitely not true. Pierre PoiliOVER here is claiming that Mark Carney wanted a rupture with the United States in order to be able to develop this partnership with Beijing. Complete lie. Mark Carney recognized that there was a rupture and that we had to pivot fast, and therefore first went where the money or the population was. Indonesia, 4th largest population. China, 2nd largest population. And lots of money to invest. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, big sovereign wealth funds. Norway, big sovereign wealth fund. Singapore, big sovereign wealth fund. India, largest population in the world, one of the youngest demographics in the world. Mark Carney strategically went to many places to diversify our trade. He is not seeking to create a new world order with the dictatorship in Beijing, hand in hand, skipping through the meadows. All right? Just these are laughably stupid statements. And this doesn't serve him because later on he claims to have a credible, positive plan. By the way, a plan is not positive just because it says it, you say it is, just like grievances are not legitimate just because you choose to put the word legitimate in front of it and say that they are, right? With him keeping on demonstrating that either he selectively hears or needs a Costco-sized box of Q-tips so that he can clean his ears, or indicating that he is just, if Mark Carney was poorly educated in economics, then Pierre PoiliOVER is clearly poorly educated in English because he cannot seem to understand what it is that he hears and reads. Every time he tells us what it is he's heard, he's read, what he's heard here, he's heard or read something completely different than what the other person has said. So either Pierre cannot understand what he hears or reads, or he's got so much earwax going on that he doesn't hear what people are saying and decides to fill in the blanks himself, which means he doesn't have anybody in his team that's doing the research to tell him what people actually said. Or, most likely, he's intentionally misrepresenting and lying. And given that we've seen this guy for 22 years on the scene, I think we know which one it is, right? Pierre lies. He just lies. Like Danielle, like Doug, he just lies. All right. Oops, sorry. Let's go back to the answer.
Of course, Mr. Carney's in a terrible conflict of interest. He went and got a $200 million loan for his company from a state-backed Chinese bank.
Okay. Once again, Brookfield is not Mark Carney's company. He has never owned it. He was the head. He was the CEO or head of the board of directors or something like that, or the CEO or something. I'm not sure which position specifically, but he was not the owner of Brookfield. He is not in a conflict of interest. That's another outright lie. 3 lies already in what, the first 15 seconds of this answer? 1 minute of the answer. No, 40 seconds. 3 lies in 40 seconds. And not like small lies, utter and complete misrepresentations.
While he was the economic advisor to Justin Trudeau, that loan is still owed, my understanding is, by Brookfield, which the Prime Minister continues to be invested in. He allowed Brookfield to be...
Again, Pierre PoiliOVER has no way of knowing what the Prime Minister is currently invested in or continues to be invested in. Even the Prime Minister doesn't know because his investments are in a blind trust.
At the table for discussions. So Mr. Carney has got to be clear that he should represent Canada's interests, not his corporation's interests. We want, and maybe one of the reasons why Canada is the only G7 country in recession right now is because he is miscalculating on trade, just like everything else. He's been wrong on every economic question over the last decade, and Canadians are paying the price. He was wrong on carbon taxes, wrong on keeping half our oil in the ground, wrong to oppose a pipeline to the Pacific, wrong to support money printing inflation, and now he's wrong in his...
Of course, Pierre PoiliOVER is saying this in the context in which Mark Carney just got Alberta to agree to industrial carbon taxes and is supporting a pipeline to the Pacific. But hey, right? Let's not let reality interfere with the narrative.
Trade priorities. We sell 20 times more to the United States than we sell to China. That's just a mathematical fact. And Mark Carney's Brookfield interests in China won't change that. We need a prime minister who's fighting for our workers in this country. We should have the best economy in the G7, not the worst.
Oh, we trade 20 times more with the United States than we do with China. Maybe that's the reason why. Maybe that's the reason why our numbers have been impacted. Right, Pierre? How many times more do we trade with the United States than we trade with France or Germany? How many times more do we trade? Sorry, how many more precisely? How many more times more do we trade with the United States than France does, or Germany does, or Japan does, or Italy? He literally answers his own question as it applies to China, but doesn't bring that same thinking when comparing us to the G7 in terms of our trade with the United States. He is not serious. He's just not serious. And again, trying to paint the Prime Minister as inherently corrupt and self-serving and self-dealing. Again, look at the messenger. Everything that Pierre PoiliOVER accuses the Prime Minister of is something about himself that he does not like. Everything. Dirty backroom deals, Damien Couric. Corrupt and unethical, he has a lifetime compliance agreement with Elections Canada. When his political party pleaded guilty to cheating in an election, he didn't stand on principle and leave the party. He's now leading it. Pierre PoiliOVER himself is invested in Brookfield. Or at least at the time that his last disclosure, or one of his disclosures were made, during the election at least, showed so. He doesn't have a problem with this. He doesn't have a problem with people being invested in Brookfield. He doesn't have a problem with lying and cheating. He doesn't have a problem with corruption. He clearly doesn't have a problem with these things. So then you take all this information that he's wrong about, and then he talks about his plan. How credible can his plan be, really? It's just, The man is not helping himself. Kid Saucy. PoiliOVER does not understand economics at all. He just doesn't. And yeah, this is defamation territory. You are completely correct about that, Saucy. Yeah. The man, like I said, just lies. Won't present more from him on that. He had another press conference, I think it was yesterday, in which he said things that are equally risible, would be the word, I guess. Some that even produced some chuckles from many people in many quarters, because they were just as insane. We have by the way, just on an aside, we have a Doug Ford that saw Ambassador Hoekstra's tweet and said, "I can't believe I have to say this again, but Canada will never be the 51st state. Canada is not for sale. While I'm at it, here's the truth. In April, Ontario created 680% more jobs than the US adjusted for population. That's how we protect Ontario." Okay. Doug Ford taking opportunity to self-promote there. But clearly, Doug Ford is also doing some stuff in the United States, right? Looks like he wants to have some type of a summit of some kind or whatnot with Ross Perot. Again, it's weird what's going on with conservatives in Canada. But here's one of the statements that he made yesterday that made a lot of people laugh. Once again, proof that that which PoiliOVER accuses others are things that actually apply to himself. If you're drinking something, I would suggest that you put down the cup now so as to avoid a spit take.
I would encourage Liberals to stop the divisive rhetoric and work on uniting Canadians. I know the Liberal Party survives and thrives on divide and conquer politics. That's not what we need. I would encourage...
Girl, come on. The Liberal Party? Liberal Party was oh my God. The Liberal Party is the party that survives and thrives on divide and conquer politics. Yeah. Again, making his nonsense claim that under the Conservative government 10 years ago, support for separation was zero. Of course, that is absolutely nonsensical. Another one, frankly, I've done a lot more in opposition than Mr. Carney has been doing in government to promote tariff-free trade. While the Mexicans have been in formal talks, Mark Carney has been gallivanting around giving speeches filled with dazzling buzzwords that achieve nothing. If you've done a lot more in opposition than Mr. Carney's been doing in government, you should have been able to list that in the response and point to it. But you didn't. Because you haven't. Again, this is not a serious man. Bruce Arthur, the Toronto Star columnist, that comment about the Liberals thriving on divide and conquer politics. Quote, "Of all of PoiliOVER's questionable verbal forays today, this was the one that made me guffaw." Yeah. You think? By the way, the allegedly unseen, unheard of Mark Carney on the status of the economy. Fixed that about 28 minutes ago. This here has come up again. The wonderful and very intrepid Scott Robertson has the clip for us already. It's very good. I recommend following that account. I really do. But here we have two things from Mark Carney, because apparently, according to Pierre, he's been hiding. So let's see what the person who actually understands economics has to say about the state of the economy.
I'll say this about the economy, which is that we're in the process, this government's been in the process of laying the foundations for a stronger, more resilient, more independent Canadian economy. That process is settling in during that time as we make major investments, major changes to how the government operates, how we do major projects, how we have new trade agreements with other countries. It's always difficult. I should always remember to go up the stairs more slowly or get in better shape. As we do all that, the data is going to be uneven, and we see some weakness, in part because of clear decisions by the government. So we have taken back control of immigration. That's meant the population growth has flattened. In fact, it's slowed, or it's been negative for the last 2 quarters. We have reined in government spending. So it had been growing close to 10%. It's growing less than 2% now. So that's also something that weighs on. There's some other choppiness in terms of how investment is happening. But we're also seeing at the same time the foundations coming into place, settling in for that stronger, more resilient economy. So for example, if you look at business investment, particularly in machinery and equipment, in R&D, in intellectual property, that's actually up quite sharply in the last couple of quarters, including the most recent quarter. If you look at household incomes, they are now growing strongly. They continue to grow faster than the rate of inflation. There's more to be done without question, but they're moving in the right direction. So you have these cross currents as the economy is being fundamentally transformed. We're going to continue to work. We're making progress, but there's more to be done. I'll say this about the economy, which is...
Oh, here, the Prime Minister, who Pierre PoiliOVER accuses of hiding, starts answering the question before it's even asked as he's climbing up the stairs. Not exactly conduct of someone who is hiding. Number 2, mentions a couple of things, like, for example, the cuts to immigration that Pierre PoiliOVER asked for and wanted and would be doing the same, according to him. Yeah, if you have less people coming in, there's less economic activity. That does decrease GDP. The cuts to what the government is spending on operational spending that Pierre PoiliOVER also said he would cut. He said he would cut more sharply than the Prime Minister has. Criticizes the Prime Minister for not cutting sharply enough. That affects GDP. So when Pierre says that he has a positive and allegedly credible plan to improve the economy, and his plan includes the things that Mark Carney is already doing, which negatively affect GDP growth. How does he purport to convince us that he would have a better performance? Because we know that with Pierre PoiliOVER's plan, the additional investment in, for example, intellectual property and all these other mentions, the heavy industry equipment and all that kind of stuff that Mark Carney is talking about in this response, that would not be coming because Pierre PoiliOVER doesn't have a plan for that. Right? His plan is even more. Try to convince the United States to go back to the 1965 Auto Pact, something that they've said that they do not want. I mean, if it was that easy, it's just going back to the 1965 Auto Pact. And do you not think that Mark Carney would have already done that? It's not at all serious. Got Kit Hugh here talking about the dental program. Got dentures last year with the Canadian Dental Care Program. Boom. Good. We love hearing that. We love hearing about news, about programs actually working as they were intended. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And then the second bit that Prime Minister had for us here is a shorter clip, I think 101 minute and 34. And this has to do with what I read to you about the decrease in tariffs that the United States has put in place. Let's see what the Prime Minister has to say about that, because I'm sure that Pierre PoiliOVER won't have much positive to say about that anytime soon.
Yes, so in terms of the discussions with the U.S., there's a series of issues, technical issues that they have with Mexico, they have with us, which is why there's a bifurcated discussion. So 30 issues or so with us, more than almost 60, I think, with Mexico at current count. And so we're working through a series of those issues. They're of varying technicality, if I can put them, and some of them are provincial. But for us, there's the more fundamental structural issues, as people know, which relate to the so-called strategic sectors. That's the American term, the 232 tariffs that are on automobiles, on steel, aluminum, forest products particularly. And there we're looking to determine whether there's a possibility of a new partnership there. And the question, which refers to public comments of the U.S. About U.S. content in Mexico. So in automobiles. And where the negotiations have been, or where the agreement has been around North American continent. So you see the shift in U.S. focus there. And my response was just pointing out that the 50% U.S. content which has been floated is actually the average level of Canadian exports. Now, that's an average, and there's a range around those averages, so I'm not endorsing that in any way, but it gives you a sense. It's a much bigger issue given the structure of Mexico.
So there you go. Prime Minister having some comment on both of those issues for us today. Kit Frankie makes a good point here. It's immaterial that Pierre lies. It's pathetic that the media doesn't fact check him. Agreed, because that is their job. Somebody that did fact check recently, however, in a manner that was rather embarrassing, if one would look at it that way, is Germany's ambassador to Canada, Thorven Bellman, who, if you remember, before we left for the weekend, I presented a clip where, maybe I presented a clip, or maybe I just mentioned it, that Pierre wanted to give the Prime Minister a geography lesson as it pertains to LNG shipments and all of that kind of stuff. Not only that, that there was a shorter route if you were going through the north, but also overall that there was no business case, or the claim, I should say, that there was no business case for LNG exports. Trudeau had made that claim a while ago. There was another aspect to it that's escaping me off the top of my head. Hopefully I can find it very quickly here and be able to add the additional context. But, of needing a pipeline going east to be able to sell more to Germany. Here, the ambassador of Germany to Canada actually has not so much a geography, but an economics lesson of her own to give on that front. Because according to Pierre, if we want to ship to Germany, then we absolutely need uh, a pipeline for LNG coming out of the east, or else there's no way that's going to happen, and we are completely missing the opportunity. Here, the ambassador lets us know once again that Pierre not only doesn't understand anything about economics, but clearly does not understand anything about how LNG is actually traded in real life. This is extremely embarrassing for Pierre PoiliOVER.
101 lesson for this federal government. Because Germany and BC are so far apart, there's a huge difference in distance, obviously, between BC and maybe some other spots that Germany could get its LNG. He sort of seemed to question whether this is a viable deal, if LNG will ever flow from Canada to Germany, mentioning the stalled hydrogen deal that Justin Trudeau brokered with Chancellor Scholz some years ago. What do you say to the naysayers? Is this really something that can happen? Do you think that it's possible that we will see LNG flow from BC to Germany? Is Mr. PoiliOVER wrong about this?
So we will definitely see benefits for German customers out of this deal, whether the LNG goes directly to Germany or whether it's swapped and goes to Asia and then their LNG goes to us. Doesn't really matter for the customer, right? I mean, the customer wants to have the end result. So this is why we're excited. There's other options possibly in the future. You know that on the East Coast we have projects in the making in Nova Scotia and other provinces. There might be future prospects through the north. We will see. I can only say that for my government, we are still interested in diversifying. And by the way, this is not the first LNG deal. Uniper last year struck a deal with Tourmaline, which is LNG that goes through Louisiana to Germany. So there are different options. The window for offtake and longer-term offtake is still there. It's not going to be there forever, but it is still there. And so let's, get to action and do the most of it.
Oh, what's that, Pierre PoiliOVER? We don't actually need an LNG pipeline going through the east, because even if it goes through the west, so long as the oil, the LNG gets somewhere to be traded, it can be swapped. And it gets to Germany anyway. That there's absolutely no difference at the end point for the consumer. That must have hurt. That particular quote should be all over the place. Because Pierre apparently believes that the only way to get LNG to Germany is to build a pipeline east. When we can build a pipeline west, which also gives us an advantage over the United States, because they have no Western distribution for LNG, allows us to secure more markets. We can send it. And whatever purchase that Germany wants to make of Canadian LNG, it can be a swap. And they get their delivery anyway. It's Pierre went out of his way to complicate something that's not complicated at all, in order to claim that Mark Carney is not only a failure but doesn't understand geography. That Pierre understands it much better. What a loser. I'm sorry. I did this guy. Not serious, and this is why he's politically irrelevant. Nothing he says turns out to be true. Moving on to a couple of other people here relatively quickly. I promised you more WOB for a couple of days, and today I'm going to deliver. Let's start with this. Wob Canoe gave a great interview to Vashi Kapelos soon after. He called out Danielle Smith for lying about lying about what is the duty to consult, Section 35, and how it doesn't apply, how it does apply to her in the case of the referendum that she herself is manufacturing. Of course, as you know, Danielle Smith couldn't let that stand and immediately jumped in and said, well, this is why we have courts that she does not respect, of course, to settle difference of opinion. There is no difference of opinion. As I stated to you before, the only difference is between a man who is actually tethered to reality and a woman who prefers to create her own, because reality never seems to correspond to what she needs to exist for what she's going to do next, to work. Let's just, because we need far less Danielle in this country and much more WAP, let us enjoy a little bit of WAP canoe here.
The Western Premier's meeting in Alberta concluded, at least publicly, with a sharp exchange between Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith and Manitoba's Premier Wab Kinew, with Kinew, as you heard there, urging Smith to put a stop to her fall separation referendum and challenging her on the duty of governments to consult with First Nations on issues that could affect treaty rights. And Premier Kinew is with me live right now. Hi, Premier. It's good to see you as always. Thank you very much for making the time.
Thanks for having me back.
So we only saw, and that's just a snippet, we aired more of that exchange, of course, last night after it occurred. But that's what we as the public saw. Was there a conversation after that press conference between you and the Premier?
Well, we shook hands, and yeah, that was the end of the meeting.
Wow. Wow. He corrected her. She couldn't take it. And then they shook hands, and that was the end of the meeting. This after telling her one-on-one, when they were alone, that she was wrong. She went to a microphone with him sitting there, decided to be wrong anyway, was corrected, gave herself an escape hatch, shook his hand, left the meeting, did not discuss the situation further. What kind of person does that? Oh, I know, a sociopath or narcissist. Clearly knowing that they will not win the fight with someone that said, I'm sorry, that is not going to work with me. That behavior tells you everything you need to know about her. Right there. All right.
Are there, I guess, is there anything you can share about the nature of your conversations on that? Like, is there any common ground that was arrived at behind the scenes on the issues that you raised?
Well, you know, I'd always like to find common ground with my colleagues. I'm a patriot, and so I want to see this country that I love so much thrive and succeed, and to have Alberta continue to be a wonderful part of that. So, you know, I want to also respect the collegiality and confidence we have, but I think I can do that while also saying I did encourage Premier Smith on a few occasions to not proceed with the referendum. I think Canadians, including most Albertans, don't want this referendum to happen, and we'd rather talk about things like building our economy and fixing healthcare. So that's the message that I brought to the Premier's conference, and was happy to share it during the closing press conference as well.
On the subject of the referendum and the prospect of separation, the Premier has, would you understand as Premier, if 300,000 people came to you, that would you feel some sort of imperative there?
Well, I think there's always a moral imperative to do the right thing. And in this case, I love Canada, so I would never have a referendum to break this country up. And in fact, I would like to do what I can, in a respectful way, of course, to make sure that national unity is an important priority. And so Alberta is dealing with a separatist conversation. I think there's a way to speak to people who are feeling alienated. I mean, in Manitoba, we're no strangers to feeling like Eastern Canada ignores us from time to time. So I think there's a way that we can bring everyone along But I think the way that we bring people along is by focus on uniting the country around big projects like the Port of Churchill is obviously my favorite, but big projects generally. I think if we focus on politics and we focus on division and we focus on the past, so that's a recipe to keep arguing. But if we focus on rolling up our sleeves and building big projects, I think that's a way to move past the division and move on to a brighter future ahead.
I guess when I've been covering or listening to Western premiers when they get together, I note that most of the time there actually is a lot of support for each other's big projects, and a lot of effort goes into kind of describing that support. And you mentioned this briefly last night, sort of like let's wait, let's hold off on this referendum until we see whether a pipeline is constructed. In principle, and the way in which the federal government has framed this is very much like, as long as the duty to consult is satisfied, they will go ahead with constructing this pipeline and a whole host of other things. But basically, they've even articulated a date, right? The fall of 2027. In principle, are you supportive of that?
Well, I think, yeah, that's what I'm saying is we're going to build big projects, energy projects, including pipelines and LNG, and, you know, big projects that include renewable energy as well. We're doing a number of those in Manitoba. And I think the best way for us to do that is to have a united country from coast to coast to coast. So much as when I was a kid, we were all trying to send a positive message to Quebec to stay a part of Canada, I think we want to send a message to Alberta too, that we really value your part in this country. And yeah, I don't think there's a need for a referendum, but if that's going to go ahead, then we want to send the message that Canada loves Alberta, and we want to make sure that your economic priorities are reflected as our nation's priorities, as well as the big things we want to do in other parts of the country too.
So I think we're maybe similar age. I'm guessing because I was a kid also during the referendum in Quebec. I have really clear memories, right, of the way in which the rest of the country responded. And the appeal so many people made for Quebec and Quebecers to stay in the Federation, in Canada. And at a political level, if I recall, there was a bit of a criticism after the fact that politicians outside of Quebec perhaps waited too long to voice that. You're obviously voicing it right now, but I wonder, as you think about the next number of months, do you have any hesitation about weighing in? Do you want to play a role in that? And what do you think the role for the Prime Minister should be?
Well, I think the role is, as a patriot, as somebody who loves Canada, to just extol the virtues of this country that we love so much. I think, as somebody who's in the public sphere, it's also important to just make sure that the facts are on the record. I think that's the exchange that has garnered attention from yesterday was just about that, just making sure that the public, who isn't necessarily always going to go read the entire court decision, actually sees what the judge was ruling on, and the judge was not ruling on a duty to consult interfering with citizen-led initiatives. The judge was ruling that the government of Alberta had not carried out their duty to consult. So, whatever we do, we always want the facts to be a part of it. We want the truth to be a part of it. And in this instance, hey, if making sure that we put the facts on the record helps to boost the Canadian cause here, helps to boost Team Canada, all the better. Doing the right thing should always be the imperative. And if we can do the right thing and it helps the political goals that we want to see along the way, in this case, keeping the country together, then so much the merrier.
I'll leave it on that note, Premier. I appreciate your time as always. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
So again, Premier Canoe, making it clear that there's absolutely no need for this referendum, that there's other paths forward, as he suggested in the press conference. Why not, if you absolutely want to have this, why not shelve this for a couple of years while we see whether or not the pipelines can get built? Because, of course, there's another thing that Pierre didn't factor into his analysis, but something that may be coming forward if we continue to have some bad performance. Could it be because the Premier of Alberta is adding more uncertainty into the investment climate with what she's doing? He doesn't have much to say about that, but it's nice to know that we have a Premier Canoe that is going to speak truth to power and just speak truth, period. And again, not threatening not confrontational, just we know that this is not correct. As in, we both know that what you just said is not correct, but for some reason you're saying it anyway. So I'm going to interrupt you now. We need a lot more of that, for sure. And I was thinking about Danielle Smith here, and one of the ways, I think that one of the things that is pissing her off about Wab Kinew, which is the same thing that pissed her off with Stephen Guilbeault, is that when she deals with people that are obviously people of integrity, the manner that in which Stephen Guilbeault resigned and the reasons for which he resigned, the way that Wab Kinew steps in to intervene and call out a fellow premier who trades in gaslight and BS and just calls her out, is because she has none. When she sees it in others, it makes her bulk. She has to stamp it out somehow. And Danielle Smith did keep going on with it. According to CTV, over the course of the weekend, despite all of this, this is from Stephen Hunt, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith had a few suggestions for how Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew could work together after he fact-checked her earlier this week. I'm going to guess that this sentence is supposed to be Alberta Premier Danielle Smith had a few suggestions for how she and Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew could work together after he fact-checked her earlier this week. Speaking on a radio program, Your Province, Your Premier, Smith responded to a question from show host Wayne Nelson about last week's Western Premiers event. And now I want you to listen to this answer to actually understand just how sociopathic Premier Poison Made Flesh is. Quote, I would say rather than lecturing Albertans about what they should and should not do and should believe and shouldn't, I would like to see other premiers give, as I am, reasons to feel confident in the Western Partnership and reasons to feel confidence in Canada. Assuming that, first of all, Premier Kinew is not, which couldn't be further from the truth. And notice how she torques and twists Premier Kinew, again, bopping her on the nose, metaphorically, with a rolled up newspaper for her lie, into Premier Kinew is lecturing Albertans about what they should and should not do and should not believe. No, the comment, Danielle Smith, was that you were lying. The comment was not about Albertans. He was not lecturing Albertans. He interrupted the pattern of your lie. You're the one who's lecturing right here. Always accuse your enemy of that which you are doing. Right, Dan of Green Gables? Goebbels? Or ELS? I have a picture here of who at that meeting in Kananaskis brought Team Canada t-shirts for all the premiers, of course, and made a comment about how Danielle Smith looks so good in a Team Canada t-shirt. Of course, you'll look at the photo and you have 6 premiers standing there, and one of them clearly looks much more uncomfortable than the others. Don't they? Yeah. She keeps on saying she's Federalist. She keeps on saying she's Federalist. But she keeps on shivving people. Oh my God. She just keeps on shivving people. The comments came after Smith's comments Tuesday when she repeated her belief that a judge erred in ruling. So undeterred, she doesn't believe that a judge erred in ruling. She needs to say that. She knows the judge did not err. but she needs to misrepresent. She needs to paint the judge as being incompetent for what she does next to work. Smith said she thought the decision overstated the duty to consult, noting she feels it should only be required in relation to major projects. Well, that's what you feel, but that's not what it is, boo-boo kitty. Facts, not feelings. Jurisprudence, not wish casting. Smith also says she thinks it's a mistake to expect consultations to be done in relation to citizen-initiated petitions. This is not a citizen-initiated petition, Danny. The question that's up right now is a you-initiated petition. And the consultation was not done in relation to citizen-initiated petition. The duty to consult was in relation to ensuring that the question that was going to be asked was constitutional. That the question upon which the signatures were being collected was one that was constitutional. That was your job to check that. It's not a mistake. It's the law. Again, claiming that it's just a difference of opinion. It's not a difference of opinion. Smith had a few more thoughts on the opportunities available for Western provinces to collaborate. Quote, I think the best thing those partners could do is work with us on getting pipelines built. Yes, everybody should work with you to get your projects. That's what collaboration is, but you don't have to give a damn thing. I know that Premier Canoe has said he wants to get a Churchill pipeline built. He said, move a few Alberta barrels, she said. I think that's a really good message she had. He wants to talk about LNG export, which would also benefit us. And it would also benefit him because if he had new sources of revenue, it would reduce Manitoba's reliance on equalization, as they get about $5 billion a year in equalization payments, she said. So these are the ways in which I think the Western Premier should work together. And this is a choice for Albertans. Wow, yes. These are the ways that Western Premiers should work together. Help us get pipelines. Then she added, unbelievably, Albertans went in good faith, went out. 700,000 people signed on to petition saying they wanted to have this discussion about staying in Canada, so let's have it. No. 700,000 people did not sign on to petition saying that they wanted to have this discussion. 400,000 signed it saying that they wanted to avert this discussion. Allegedly, 300,000 signed it, 300,000 that are unverified, and you cannot claim that those 300,000 were in good faith. We don't even know if those 300,000 are actually real people who signed it themselves. The organizations, or some of the people, or the organizations involved in this got hold of an electors list that they knew that they should not have, and used it in ways that they should not, and distributed it in ways that they should not, and shared people's personal information in ways that they should not. There is no good faith. A court order said that this was something that was not to be done. There was a cease and desist order. It was defied. One of the people involved fled to Texas. This is not in good faith. She lies like she breathes. Tuesday, Canoe suggested that with Canada in a trade war and as of Thursday, recession, now is not the most opportune moment to talk about separatism. Quote, now is the time to work together, Canoe said. Why don't we hold off on this referendum talk for a year or two so we can get these pipelines under construction? Because at the end of the day, we want Canada to succeed. Smith also made a comment about the more than 300,000 unverified separatist petition signatures gathered by Stay Free Alberta Saturday, or at least now the media is starting to say that they're unverified. Quote, and on the issue of signature validation, it is the 400,000 signatures for the Forever Canadian petition have been validated. The court stopped Elections Alberta from validating the 300,000 signatures achieved by Stay Free Alberta. And why did they do that, Danielle? Yes, because you failed on your duty to consult. The court stopped Elections Alberta from validating the 300,000 signatures because you screwed up. You didn't want to do the work. This is your fault. It's not the court's fault. It's your fault that the signatures could not have been validated. She went on. Elections Alberta have the boxes of signatures, she added. They have been told there's no way to validate them. So I just have to in good faith, look at that and say they needed to get 177,000. They submitted 300,000. The other petition got validated at 400,000. So that's why I think in order to follow the spirit of citizen petition law, that's why I put forward the question we did. All of that is bullshit and word salad. The fact that the other petition got validated doesn't mean that doesn't mean that the what is the name of that group? Stay Free Alberta petition needed to be validated. The 400,000 petition from Forever Canadian got validated because they collected their signatures in accordance with the law and the rules. They followed the rules. The 300,000 that you don't even know are 300,000 because there could be over 100,000 of those signatures that are fraudulent. Because the last number we had is that they were in around the 170,000, or they were having trouble getting them at least. But they weren't claiming to even have 200,000 at the point, and then boom, all of a sudden they have 300,000. With an electors list that's gone missing. With a very real possibility, given that these people tend to lie like crazy and have definitely shown that they're willing to not respect the law, could have just written down themselves based on the information they had in that database. And she's claiming not only that was their petition driving good faith, but that her action in good faith, because two groups of people collected signatures, allegedly, that she needs to treat both exactly the same, even though we know there is nothing. One followed the rules and one did not. There was no court order against the Forever Canadian petition to say, well, we can't validate those signatures. There's a problem here. This is not in good faith. You don't need to follow the spirit of the citizen petition law. You need to follow the spirit of the law. And a judge ruled. Smith's use of 700,000 includes over 400,000 signatures collected by the Forever Canadian petition drive organized by former Alberta MLA Thomas Lukasik, who said he didn't want to have a question about staying in Canada on the referendum on October 19th. Mount Royal University political scientist Laurie Williams said that while the legality of posting a citizen initiative petition question on the basis of unvalidated signatures isn't illegal, its legitimacy is debatable. Quote, questions surrounding the number of valid signatures on the Stay Free Alberta petition are understandable for two reasons: the incorrect claims made by leaders like Mitch Sylvester and Jeffrey Rath, and on other matters, and the leaked electors lists, she said. Faith, quote, in the claims of people with their Stay Free Alberta leaders' track record could magnify questions about the justification for the referendum, she said. Quote, the electors list leak raises concerns about whether names from the list could have been added to the petitions, she added. Quote, this isn't simply hypothetical. In the 2017 UCP leadership race, several people's emails were fraudulently added to the list of those eligible to vote for the leader. There's also concern about unfair access to prospective supporters. There's a tradition of this in Alberta. Quote, the legality of the referendum question may yet be challenged in court, but it was designed to get around legal issues raised so far, she added. Legitimacy is another question, she said, especially given the viscerally negative reaction from leaders supporting federalism, separatism, business and economic interests, and First Nations. And public opinion polls show these concerns are reverberating widely. Alberta NDP leader Naheed Nenshi also issued a statement about the use of unverified signatures. Quote, not one of the separatist signatures were verified, and given the data breach, there was ample ability to forge signatures. But Danielle Smith didn't care. This was always her plan. She promised separatists the referendum in return for their support, and now we are living with the consequences. She can't blame this referendum on anyone but herself. She claimed that Premier Canoe was lecturing Albertans on what they should and shouldn't do and what they should and shouldn't believe when he was calling her out for being a liar. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Couple of opinion pieces for you. Max Fawcett. Albertans are mad as hell and they're not going to take it anymore. This is the prevailing consensus in Canada right now, and not just among the conservative politicians and pundits who have spent the last decade actively encouraging that anger. In every pro-Canada communication I've seen lately, whether it's new groups launching websites or Liberal MPs recording videos, there's the same preamble. Quote, Alberta's frustrations and grievances are justified and we have to work to address them. Just ask John Ibbotson, a former columnist and political writer with the Globe and Mail. Quote, they are an angry people and they have every reason to be angry, he said while appearing on a recent CBC panel. Quote, from the time the provinces were founded, when Alberta and Saskatchewan were not given the natural resources powers that other provinces had, to the latest regulation from Ottawa limiting the development of the oil sands for environmental or other reasons, Albertans have been put upon by a central Canadian elite that looks at them as something of a colony. Bullshit, John. Alberta took control over its natural resources in 1930, nearly 2 decades before the Leduc discovery well that kicked off Alberta's first oil and gas boom. Let's all remember that the federal government, a dreaded Liberal one no less, bought and built the pipeline that did more to enable and reward oil sands exports than anything the current Alberta government has ever done. And as I and other writers have noted many times, the federal government, and again ironically Liberal ones, have repeatedly stepped in to support oil sands production, whether it was the salvation of the Syncrude consortium under Pierre Trudeau or the tax code changes under Jacques Chrétien that seeded the building boom of the 2000s. Those still laboring under the belief that things would return to those supposed glory days when high school dropouts could make six-figure salaries if only Ottawa stopped meddling on issues like climate change and environmental policy might want to take a glance at Texas. That state has been consistently governed by Republicans under a federal government that has not tried to impose things like a carbon price or other supposed impediments. As a coastal state, it has direct access to tidewater and can build as many pipelines as it pleases, and the number of people employed in so-called upstream operations, the process of removing the oil and gas from the ground, has declined by 37.4% from a high of 308,900 jobs in December 2014 to just 193,300 as of this spring. I am painfully aware of how the power imbalance between facts and feelings in our political discourse, and I understand that repeating these truths has the same general outcome as pissing into a gale force wind. But if ever there was a time for the people generating that wind to tamp it down, it's right now. After all, it's finally threatening to blow back on them. Conservative politicians in Alberta, from Danielle Smith and Jason Kenney on down to Pierre PoiliOVER and Preston Manning, have used the rage of Albertans as the fissile material powering their own political ambitions. In the process, they have created a generation of grievance junkies, people who are absolutely addicted to the idea of their own victimhood at the hands of a corrupt federal government. Social media, of course, has made it even easier to spread this poison, and every time a politician says those grievances are justified, it makes it even harder for the person who's hooked on them to kick the habit. We can and should acknowledge that they have these feelings. We should even empathize with their frustrations, as hard as it is might be for some of us. They are, after all, victims of a kind, given the decade-long campaign of rage farming to which they've been subjected. But we can't keep feeding their addiction if we want to help them break it. That won't be easy. Jim Prentice lost an election in part, maybe in large part, because he told Albertans, quote, to look in the mirror. And I suspect the lesson many politicians in Alberta learned from that was to avoid challenging their voters at all costs. But the scale of those costs should now be obvious, and they could end up being far higher than losing a single provincial election. Even if the Federalists win the referendum on a referendum question in October, one that's already polling better for separatists, the better the debate, as well as the damage it does to everything from the economy to the social fabric of the province, will endure. That's why it's not enough to simply beat the separatists. They have to be routed, their leaders humiliated, their cause scattered to the political winds. And that can't happen unless we destroy the intellectual scaffolding that they've been using to build their movement for years now. That work falls largely to the conservative politicians and pundits who helped erect it in the first place. They've always known, or they should have at least, that Alberta's grievances with Ottawa are mostly manufactured, always exaggerated, and often completely illusory. Now they need to find the courage to start telling people that before it's too late. Boom. Boom. And the other one I had for you, Kits and Cubs, was the one by Richard Warnica, one that we'd been talking about for a few days, about him having returned to Alberta and being terrified about what he found. Edmonton, Calgary, Mossley, Lethbridge. I had known Mitch Sylvester, the architect of the Alberta independence movement, for less than 5 minutes when he first implied King Charles might have killed him. It was late February. We were in a loud coffee shop near the Alberta legislature. He kept mouthing the words, the king, but he wouldn't say them out loud. I don't want to get shot, he said, then whispered them again, enunciating, this time barely audible. The king. The king, I replied. Yes, he said, it will be the end of my days. At that point, I still assumed Sylvester must be joking. He is, after all, a serious political player in Alberta. It's not just that he's leading the campaign to have his province break away from Canada. He is also deeply enmeshed in the ruling United Conservative Party. So I played along. Quote, "You think the king's going to come for you?" I asked, laughing. He laughed an exaggerated, "No," while nodding vigorously. "I saw him when he was in Ottawa," I said. "I don't think he knows his way around a rifle," Sylvester moaned. "That's not even funny," he said. "That's not funny at all." I spent a week in Alberta recently following Sylvester around and speaking to separatist supporters, opposition leaders, economists, pollsters, and more. I wanted to understand how Alberta independence, a movement long relegated to the kookiest fringes of the far right, had become so real so fast. It's a personal issue for me. I was born in Edmonton. I grew up in Calgary. Most of my family and some of my closest friends still live in the province. If, as seems increasingly likely, Albertans vote on independence this fall, they will be voting on my right to keep going home without a passport. What I found on my trip and in weeks of reporting both before and after shocked me. Make no mistake, Sylvester and the movement he's helping lead are deadly serious. They can pack rooms in tiny hamlets and big cities. More importantly, they have become perhaps the most influential faction inside the UCP. They are also dangerously detached from reality. I saw Sylvester speak in person both in our interview and at events across the province for more than 5 hours combined. I later reviewed hours more footage and transcripts from other speeches and interviews he gave as he barnstormed across Alberta, making the case for independence. An astonishing number of the stories he told at every stop were either exaggerated, distorted, or outright false. Sylvester seems to truly suspect, to cite one example, that King Charles has both the capacity and the interest in having him killed. He thinks oil spills help trees grow, that Canada has the highest taxes in the world. I saw him tell one crowd in Mossley, Alberta, that he thinks that there are Chinese communist soldiers in Canada, in part because he saw 6 Asian men in West Edmonton Mall wearing new coats. In another era of Canadian politics, Sylvester's devotion to far-right memes, conspiracies, and outright disinformation would be disqualifying. But here's the thing: in Alberta right now, it's working. On Monday, Sylvester hand-delivered more than 300,000 signatures to election officials in Edmonton, far surpassing the 178,000 he needed to get a referendum on the ballot. That was what makes Sylvester perhaps the most important person in Canadian politics right now. He is trying to break up the country. His name is literally atop the independence petition, and he has at least the tacit and quite likely active support of significant parts of the Alberta government. I'm not 100% convinced he's going to lose. Sylvester is a tall man and almost completely bald. He owns a sporting goods store in Bonnyville, a small town northeast of Edmonton, and usually dresses like a high school basketball coach on a banquet day. On stage, he speaks in declarative fragments. He booms, pacing back and forth, bouncing from conspiracy to conspiracy. He also seems to be constantly moving the lower half of his mouth up and down, side to side, in little half loops like an actor doing warm-ups or someone who has just been punched in the jaw. I spent weeks exhaustively fact-checking Sylvester. I have no qualms saying his speeches and interviews are packed with near ceaseless errors of fact and interpretation. At the same time, I don't believe he's deliberately lying about anything. I think Sylvester genuinely thinks the pitch he's making for independence is both factual and righteous. Quote, "You can nitpick a point here, a point there," he said in one of our talks, "but the general premise is absolutely credible." In Sylvester's mind, the federal government has been undermining Alberta since the moment the province entered Confederation in 1905. He and other separatists and quite a few federalists believed that an eastern elite concentrated in Ontario and Quebec have consistently stifled Alberta's energy industry, that the federal equalization formula is biased against Albertans, even though it was created by Albertans, and that the structure of federal Albertan conservatives, by the way, Jason Kenney, I believe, and Stephen Harper, I believe. I might be wrong on who was the premier at the time. Actually, it might not have been. It might have been Prentice and Harper at the time. But yes, the current equalization formula was created essentially by an Alberta premier and a prime minister from Alberta, both of them who loved the oil and gas industry. And that the structures of federal power are so tilted towards the center that Albertans will never receive a fair shake. An independent Alberta, Sylvester believes, would be richer and more free. It would also have lower taxes, fewer regulations, fewer immigrants, and more Alberta-born children. Quote, "Our constitution, it says that you're going to have to be born in Alberta to become a citizen," he told the crowd at one event I attended. "So we're going to have to get those girls making more babies." Ugh, cringe. Blah. It's a pitch thousands of Albertans have signed on for, and one I saw hundreds of people eagerly swallow at events across the province earlier this year. But Sylvester didn't always feel this way about the rest of Canada. In fact, he told me as we drank coffees that he was never political before 2020. What changed? COVID, he said. They shut me down, and Canadian Tire and Walmart stayed open. That's what did it. So again, it's about money. Sylvester blames former Alberta Premier Jason Kenney for temporarily closing Sylvester Sporting Goods, which sells mostly guns and fishing gear, during the pandemic. He joined the UCP shortly afterwards with the explicit goal of driving Kenney out of office and later installing Danielle Smith in his place. To this day, Sylvester remains one of the UCP's most important organizers. As such, he believes Smith has no choice but to indulge the separatists in her party. He may be right. A recent poll pegged support for independence at 55% among UCP voters. As Premier Smith has certainly gone to extraordinary lengths to clear the separatist path, she lowered the number of signatures required to get a referendum on the ballot. She killed off one court challenge brought in by Alberta First Nations and had her government intervene in another. She, as critics say, delayed the efforts of a rival pro-Canada group to get their own petition on the ballot. Quote, I really don't know what her own views are, said Paula Simons, who spent decades as an influential journalist in Edmonton before becoming an independent Alberta senator. Quote, I don't think anyone else does either. But in order to stay in power, she knows in her RNA that that requires placating the most radical elements of her own party. What those radical elements want is clear: independence. Between January and late April, Sylvester and his allies circulated a petition that sought to put this question to voters. Do you agree that the province of Alberta should cease to be part of Canada and become an independent state? On Monday, Sylvester dropped off dozens of bankers' boxes stuffed with signed petitions to a loading dock at Elections Alberta headquarters in Edmonton. Outside, he addressed scores of cheering supporters waving Alberta's blue and yellow flag. So the updated tally is 301,620, he said. Now we're in the Stanley Cup final. If those tallies are verified by elections officials, and if they aren't stopped by a court challenge, both, the tallies weren't verified and they were indeed stopped. Many believe Smith will schedule the referendum for October, when the province is already set to vote on 9 other items related to immigration and provincial autonomy. What happens after that is anyone's guess. Committed support for separatism in Alberta remains relatively flat, but some pollsters, not all of them, suggest it is growing. In March, Polara released a survey that found that 27% of decided Albertans would vote to separate, the highest such number in 5 years. A significantly higher number of Albertans, meanwhile, may be willing to vote for independence just to create leverage with Ottawa, according to many pollsters and political insiders I spoke to. Quote, I get contacted by smart, sophisticated, usually oil patch-related people almost every day that tell me I'm a complete idiot because I don't understand negotiating, said former Alberta Premier Jason Kenney. Quote, my message to the frustrated federalists who want leverage is, be careful what you ask for. Those numbers still suggest the separatists would very likely lose a referendum if it were held today, but a lot can happen between now and next fall. Quote, campaigns can take a life of their own, says Dave Cournoyer, a longtime Alberta political analyst. A year before the Brexit vote, some polls had remained up by 20 points. My parents left Montreal for Edmonton with my 2 older brothers in 1981, not long after Quebec's first sovereignty referendum in 1980. I was born later that year, the first Albertan in the family. My parents, especially my mother, were always relatively liberal for Alberta. Still, if you had asked me as a kid, I probably would have agreed that yes, Alberta was getting screwed over by the East. Western alienation was just part of their air we breathed, but not separatism. The most ardently pro-Alberta people I knew in the 80s and 90s were also the most patriotic. They would talk about Ottawa like it was a Gomorrah, then go out and get Canadian flags tattooed on their calves the day they turned 18. There's significant debate in the province as to when that changed. Many experts and insiders I spoke to see contemporary Alberta separatism as a northern echo of the far-right populism driving Donald Trump's popularity in the US. Having spent much of the last 10 years covering Trump, I do buy that to a degree. Both movements are populist, rural-dominated, anti-immigrant, and driven to at least some extent by a decline in high-paying, secure, blue-collar jobs. I also had the same feeling talking to separatists in Alberta that I often get talking to supporters at Trump rallies, that somewhere along the line we had each entered different worlds with different facts and different values. The key difference now, however, was that I was talking to them in my home country. Andrea Ainsley grew up in the same part of Calgary I did at roughly the same time. We spoke on FaceTime after meeting in the comments section of a pro-independence Facebook group. What she told me didn't sound at first at all different from the kinds of things I'd hear from my friends' dads back in the day. I'd hear from my friends' dads in the backyard barbecues in the 90s. I think most of it is really around the inequity between the provinces, she said. So Quebec, for example, has got their special deal and has always seemed to have a special deal with the federal government. Ainsley also expressed something I would hear over and over again at independence rallies, that people back east don't just take Albertans for granted, they look down on them. That's classic Western alienation. It's also a viewpoint I understand. I've lived in Toronto for almost 15 years. I'm still shocked by how little some people in this part of the country know or care about the West. When Ainsley told me that Alberta is underrepresented in the House of Commons and the Senate, I nodded in agreement. But the longer we spoke, the less it seemed like we were moored in the same reality. One of the major reasons Ainsley wants to separate is so that Alberta can control its own immigration system. Quote, I'm certainly not a racist person, she told me. I think in some cases we brought in doctors and things like that. But I mean, when you see immigrants breaking in and robbing a liquor store, taking advantage of stores or extorting people or crime, and at certain demographic continuously, that's concerning, especially with our catch and release system. Ainsley told me that she believes, quote, Caucasian white males specifically are being excluded from job opportunities in Canada, and that the reason her daughter can't get a job at Tim Hortons is because the company, quote, is getting subsidized to hire foreigners. Tim Hortons does employ thousands of temporary foreign workers across Canada, but does not get subsidized to hire them. The company also says about 95% of its 100,000 Canadian employees are hired locally. And Tim Hortons also just recently announced that they're on a bigger hiring spree because they're planning on opening a whole bunch of new stores, and that they will not be looking to temporary foreign workers unless it's absolutely vitally necessary to fill those positions, that they're actually on a campaign specifically to look for local, while also pointing out that the franchise owners that are business people are all also usually mostly local. Ainsley and I come from the same place at the same time, so many of our terms of reference are identical, yet when it comes to politics and information, we're floating on different rafts in different oceans. I don't think you can underestimate the role that fracturing of shared knowledge has had on the growth of the separatist movement in Alberta. Much of Sylvester's stock presentation is sourced directly from far-right outline outlets, influencers, and the social media accounts. Those kind of sources didn't exist 20 years ago. They certainly wouldn't have gone mainstream. Near the end of my week in Alberta, I had breakfast in Lethbridge with Shannon Phillips, a former NDP MLA and cabinet minister. As I ate from a massive bowl of eggs, bacon, cheese, and hollandaise, I asked her what had changed in Alberta. She held up her smartphone and shook it. It's this black rectangle, she said. People are bathing in a sea of lies. This isn't just an Alberta problem, obviously, but there are Alberta-specific factors. The province has always been more right-wing than the rest of the country and more prone to populism. The collapse of the local news business has also been far more severe and impactful in Alberta than it has been in Toronto. I'm biased on that point. I started my newspaper career 20 years ago this summer at the Edmonton Journal. I watched for years as outside owners took that place apart, stripping it of experience and influence and accelerating a mass splintering of public norms in Alberta. Phillips put it more bluntly. There are no effing guardrails left, she said. There's no effing shame. Made that the truth. I think that's what surprised me most about my conversations, not just with Ainsley, but with separatists all over Alberta. It's not that I'm shocked people hold some of these views, but I'm still surprised that they would say some of them on the record to a reporter from the Toronto Star. Quote, people are here for free, Sylvester told me over coffee. They get paid a lot of money to come down here and take our jobs. Which people, I asked him. Immigrants, he replied. That kind of unapologetic openness is new and not just happening at rallies or in media interviews. Raki Pancholi, an NDP MLA in Edmonton, told me she's experienced blatant racism over the past 2 years in Alberta in a way she has never before, sometimes even from her own constituents. She ties that at least in part to rhetoric driving the independence movement and to the people, including Danielle Smith, enabling it. That's not just a left-wing opinion. Leela Ahir, a founding member of the former deputy leader of the Leela Ahir, a founding member and former deputy leader of the UCP, told me the political atmosphere has changed dramatically in Alberta in recent years. What happened, I asked her. COVID, she replied, 150,000%. The Aspen outpost in Mossley, Alberta, sticks out of the grassland southeast of Calgary like a glowing flag planted on a yellow moon. Only 53 people live in the hamlet, according to the last census, but the outpost, a truck stop, restaurant, and bar, holds hundreds more. The night I arrived, the parking lot overflowed with pickup trucks, SUVs, and at least one backhoe, planted beneath a neon sign visible for miles either way down Highway 24. I was in Mossley to see Mitch Sylvester for a second straight night on his Stay Free Alberta tour. The Mossley stop was one of dozens of events the Independence Organization held this year, signing up voters for the referendum and picking up volunteers. Sylvester was due up fourth, after 2 online content creators and a country singer named Lindsay Butler. The next song is a song that I thought I would never have to write. Living in the freest country in the world, Butler told the crowd midway through her set. I completed the song of the day, Jason Kenney. She paused, tears welled in her eyes. I still get a little emotional, she said. The day that our Premier Jason Kenney decided that we decided that we could put Vax Pass in place and we can control you all and ruin your lives and do whatever we want with you because we control everything. Much of the energy now turning the Western alienation of my childhood into direct support for separatism in Alberta stems from the anti-establishment fervor that emerged during the COVID era. It's the same energy that spawned the trucker convoy and the UCP rebellion against Jason Kenney. Quote, I think a lot of them got a great sense of meaning and satisfaction and righteousness from the COVID struggle, Kenney told me. They regarded their support for the convoy movement as a moment of great moral meaning for them, and so they're looking for a new fight and they've transitioned to separatism. How that transition happened and why is still not 100% clear. A surprising number of plugged-in political insiders in Alberta believe malign foreign actors may be playing a role, an argument backed up now by multiple media reports. Several others told me that they think Prime Minister Mark Carney's surprise victory in last year's federal election was a major spur. Still others say just about the only relevant factor is Smith's refusal to shut the movement down. Quote, Danielle Smith has opened the door to a referendum on separation, said Janet Brown, Alberta's most respected political pollster, and that door has not been opened before. There's no doubt that Smith's at least tacit support for a referendum is a defining factor in the current separatist wave. Quote, in an emailed statement, Sam Blackett, Smith's press secretary, said the Premier has always been clear that she, her government, and her caucus support a strong sovereign Alberta within a united Canada. This means Alberta remaining a province of Canada while advancing provincial autonomy. At the same time, I also believe Smith is responding to a genuine focused energy from her base. The absolute number of committed separatists in Alberta may not have changed that much over the past 5 years, according to pollsters, but the influence they have and the noise they're making certainly has. And as disconnected from reality as much as Sylvester's message is, millions of Albertans have been listening to it. Hundreds of thousands of them at least seem to like what they hear. The coffee shop where I met Sylvester on my first full day in Alberta was about 3 blocks from my last apartment in downtown Edmonton. Most Canadians don't think much of Edmonton when they think of it at all, but I love the place. It can be creative, diverse, strange, and welcoming. At its best, it's the opposite of all the stereotypes Eastern Canadians hold about Alberta. That's part of what bothers me so much about the independence movement. It is reinforcing ideas about Albertans I've been telling people in my adopted home aren't true since I moved there in 2011. At the same time, that dynamic goes both ways. Some people in Ontario or Quebec may ignore or look down on Albertans, but the people selling Alberta independence are doing so largely based on lies about how the rest of this country works. The first thing I asked Sylvester when we sat down was what had changed. How did the Western alienation that I grew up with morph into the separatism he was selling today? He looked at me like I was slow, or worse, from Toronto. It's the Liberals, he said. Sylvester told me he believes the federal Liberal Party under Justin Trudeau and now Mark Carney is stealing everything we can borrow and everything we send them. And where's it going is my question, he said. I've got a real good idea. And that's when he brought up the king. Sylvester seems to honestly believe that Trudeau and Carney have shipped billions of dollars in stolen Canadian money to King Charles, exposing that theft he implied is what's going to get him killed. It isn't the only unlikely thing he believes. He told the crowd that night in Edmonton that until 2019, it was illegal for Canadian journalists to lie, that the Liberals brought in 15 million immigrants in 10 years, that for every $1 billion in foreign aid handed out between 2015 and 2025, Justin Trudeau may have pocketed 900 million of it. I fact-checked many of Sylvester's claims in more detail in another article that you can read on the Star's website. And here, get some cubs. I'm going to include the link to the other article right here. And that way you can go check that for yourself. What else did Mr. Way here? Some of his claims were easily disprovable. That Canada has the highest taxes in the world, for example. According to the OECD, our labor taxes are below average, and our consumption taxes are among the lowest in the developed world. Others were so strange I found them all but impossible to fact-check definitively. At the event in Edmonton, he told a story about a reformed gangster turned marijuana farmer in Bonnyville getting beat up after cutting off a home invader's hand with an axe before driving his assailants away with an unregistered firearm. It ended with easily the most surprising punchline I have ever heard. He's got a concussion, Sylvester said of the ex-gangster. And what happens in the hospital? He paused for effect. The doctor offers him maid. I was not able to either reach the axe-wielding marijuana farmer or his lawyer, but one Alberta expert on medical assistance in dying told me that the scenario as described struck her as, quote, ridiculous. When I asked Sylvester about all of this, he told me in essence that it doesn't matter if he gets small details wrong. He meant that Canada has the most taxes, not the highest, for example, although that is also wrong. His broader point stands. The media is allowed to lie. Canadians are overtaxed. Alberta would be stronger and more prosperous on its own. You're nitpicking fine little things and missing the big point, he said. Yeah, well, if your big point is supported by many, many fine little things that are not correct, you don't have a point, sir. A spokesperson for the broader independence movement later followed up by email claiming that Sylvester was being rhetorical, not literal, in almost every case where he was factually wrong. But having listened to Sylvester for hours and spoken to him one-on-one, I don't find that explanation remotely credible. And it wouldn't matter either. I also think that when it comes to breaking up a country, the details do matter. Sylvester is not a fringe figure. In Alberta right now, he's on the inside. And we've all seen firsthand what can happen when movements like this, built on demonizing outsiders, disparaging experts, and promoting misinformation, are allowed to become mainstream. In February 2016, I watched Donald Trump tell a cheering crowd in Manchester, New Hampshire, that he planned to throw $179 179,000 illegal criminals out of the country. 10 years later, almost to the day, I was inhaling tear gas in Minneapolis while masked agents from Trump's immigration police nabbed people from the streets based on the color of their skin. A few days after I came back to Alberta, a trip I largely spent in crowded rooms full of people who were vocally skeptical of vaccines, I got the sickest I've been since my last confirmed case of COVID. For weeks, I could barely stay awake more than a couple of hours at a time. My head felt less foggy than it did clouded, and like my skull was packed with ultralight gas. Even after I recovered, I still didn't feel right. I realized eventually it wasn't physical anymore. I had gone to Alberta worried about the future of one province. I came home frightened for an entire country. We like to imagine we are immune somehow from whatever it is that has torn the American polity apart so violently over the past 10 years, that what is happening there could never happen here. I promise you it can. In Alberta, it already is. Okay. There you go. Uniquely Jillian here. Central Canada never asked to live rent-free in Alberta's head, but here we are. Yeah. Yeah. I had more, but we're closing in on 3 hours, and I'm hoping to make this a Double Beaver day somehow. I might not make this a Double Beaver day, actually 3 hours. I haven't even got through what I wanted to do, which was supposed to be in the first two. I'm a little tired as well. Maybe if I have a nap, I'll be able to come up, because there's Doug Ford stuff, and of course the BC Conservatives have a new leader, and I was hoping to get through that today as well, but did not. Kiss and Cubs. That's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us, because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring, and word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps and poops all about us, because it really helps us when you do. And of course, because the throttling is still continuing, please share the content. It matters, again, especially if you include a little bit of yourself that says why it is it resonated with you. That's advertising we cannot buy. If you would like to help us in, there's two ways you can do that. The first, of course, is by going to our YouTube page. If you're not already there, scan this QR code to bring you there, and click on our like, share, and subscribe buttons. Also, click on the notification bell and ask for all, because of the throttling that's happening, a lot of people were not appearing on people's screens. So that notification bell will let you know when it is that we have published something, and therefore you can come and look at it. And I'm not sure if it gives you warnings as well about when a show is about to come. I don't know if it pre-announces them, but it definitely announces that content has been posted, and that way you can find us. Because it seems that even though our click-through rate has not changed, when people see our content, the number of impressions that our content has may have been affected, and therefore people see it less often and have less opportunity to click on it, which is why I'm asking you to share as well. If you are watching on your phone and not live, but within 7 days, please offer some hype points that helps shows with smaller audiences like ours be noticed. If you go to the comment section and just swipe left, that you should see where you can grant us some hype points, and you can only do that 3 times per week. So thank you so much for doing that for us too. I've been seeing that the number of hype points we've been getting on shows has been increasing from when I first asked to do that. So thank you for all that you're doing to try to bring attention to our product. Very much appreciated. The other way, of course, you can help us is financially, because we do incur some costs to bring this show to you. And if you would scan that QR code, Kids and Cubs, we would really, really appreciate it. That will bring you to the Eager Beaver Lodge's Emergency Hydration Fund at our coffee page. That's coffee, ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, all in one word. You can make a one-time donation or a recurring donation that you can stop anytime that you want. You're not locked into it whatsoever. And when you donate through coffee, we get about 95 to 97% of your donation, and we thank you for that. You can also donate via YouTube by buying a membership, sending a sticker, or a super chat, and that creates a situation where we get about 70% of your donation, And if you're doing the Buy Canadian thing, then a direct bank-to-bank transfer using our email address, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com, is the way to ensure that we get a more bang for your beaver buck, because there we get 100% of your donation, which is always a very good thing. And plus, you're buying Canadian. No US CE Tech Bros gets a share of your money, and that's also very good. Let's see, what else do we have for you? Because democracy is something that you do. Remember, we have the 3 petitions. I already showed you the first one, but the other 2 are for, this is House of Commons petition E7395, to ask the House of Commons to stop forming Stornoway as a private residence for the leader of the official opposition. I'm going to put the link in the chat for you to sign it and share. Now, remember, when you sign an R Canada, our commons.ca petition. I'm really having trouble today. I'm so sorry, kids. That you need to wait for an email to verify that you have signed, and then your signature will be considered official. And we have so far on this one 11,594 signatures. There's also another petition, ourcommons.ca 7340, and I will include the link. Sorry, having a little bit of trouble here. Let's try that one more time. Share the link in the chat for you here. Come on, there you go. And this one is calling for the House of Commons to invoke its authority under Section 53 of the Supreme Court Act to refer the constitutionality of the 2025 Alberta's Justice Statutes Amendment Act to the Supreme Court of Canada, and to direct the Foreign Influence Transparency Commissioner to immediately investigate the meetings between the Alberta Prosperity Project and the Trump administration. And we have 35,999 signatures for that one as present. Actually, no, that just jumped to 36,002. There you go. So please sign those and circulate them widely to friends, family, and all of that kind of stuff, so that hopefully we can get some action on this. Don't have to ask you to vote in the BC Conservative race, because that has been won by Carrie Lynn Finley. Hopefully I will have more for that on the next episode, because I was hoping to do it today along with some stuff on Doug Ford, but that didn't happen. So later on when I do that, those will be the first 2 things that I tackle, unless there's been some breaking news that has come out in the meantime. But yeah, that's what we got for you there. And I don't think there's anything else at the moment. And for any of you who came out to protest throughout Alberta on the 29th and Ontario on the 30th, thank you for doing so, for making your voices heard. Those were 2 province-wide demonstration days, and hopefully we were able to send a message. Not that Danielle Smith and Doug Ford appear to be people. Well, Danielle Smith actually appears to be a person that is influenced by what anybody outside has to say. Doug Ford, every now and then, does allow himself to change his mind a little bit if he's feeling a little bit of pressure. Words of wisdom, kids and cubs. Be a pattern interrupter. Right? If you have people gaslighting, BSing, spreading misinformation, those lines, I would like to respond. We both know that that is not correct. Are very, very, very handy and helpful. So interrupt pattern. If you're seeing any BS out there, whatnot, just nope, that's not true, or no, that's not going to work. That misinformation is not going to work here. And then provide the actual information if you happen to know it. We need to, as Max Fawcett says here, we need to stop indulging victimhood and pretending that grievances are legitimate when they are founded on mistruths or torqued or twisted versions of reality that just are not tethered to anything that fair-minded people of good faith can see for themselves and observe for themselves when they are looking at actual reality. So be a pattern interrupter. And whether that's political or in your regular life, right? In our regular lives, we all have people that try to manipulate or gaslight us. Um, I see what you're doing here, and that will not work with me. Really is effective. It's very disarming when people try that. So it's something to include in your vocabulary, but be a pattern interrupter. Kids and cups, it can be a tough world out there, so please be kind to and gentle with yourself. And I will return with a little bit of news about some Canadians who make us proud. But before we do that, kids and cubs, may I? Oh yes, I forgot. Thank you, Kit Saucy. Um, if you are not able to help us financially, we still want a contribution from you, if possible, via our email address, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com. Let us know what you think about the show, good, bad, or ugly. Please give us some suggestions for guests for our interview project series. If you've got any questions about politics or the show, please let me know what they are. Would be happy to answer them for you. I'm working on getting Olga Nestorova from the Honest News Network back on the show to talk a little bit about matters of foreign relations and things going around the world. So if you've got any questions for me to ask her, please include them. I will create a YouTube post after the show asking for your questions so that you can put them there, and they can be in all one spot, and I can collect them so that I can ask them to Olga when she does come on the show and we are able to pick a date. And I will be doing that for interviews coming forward, because sometimes I don't see your questions where they're coming through on the chat. So when I know that we're going to have a guest, I'll put, or when I'm working on a guest, I will put something out there and then ask for your questions, because sometimes you have questions too. And remember, as I keep on telling you, it's not just my show, right? It's our show. We're a community. So I definitely want your input, and I want the questions that you have to be answered as well. I don't want this just to be a unidirectional thing here. So yeah, and if you're looking, so you can send that to us at our email address, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com. And if you're looking for us at our socials, at TrueEager at the Blue Sky Beaver Lodge on the Jitter, True North Eager Beaver on Facebook. We have our Beaver Bites Substack. We have our coffee page. We have the DamFam Discord. I see Kit Saucy has put the link there. We have the Instagram that is run by Kit Uncover. I will see the link there too. And of course, our Substack, where we are now also broadcasting live as well. So all of these places where you can keep the conversation going. And we thank you for that. And thank you for reminding me, Kit Saucy, by putting the posts there that I had completely skipped over that part of my extra. So now, Kits and Cubs, at the count of 3, may I please, because it's time for some audience participation, have you say, Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock on 1, 2, and 3. Ah, yes, that is the good stuff right there. And since you asked so patriotically, how, as your royal queen, can I deny you, especially during Pride Month? The queen absolutely must serve and slay on Pride. So here we go. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. Kids and Cubs. Just a little note. Today I wasn't actually preparing something for the Canadians who make us proud, because I had it all set up before, and I actually heard the bit in the end, the bit of the extra, and now I know what it is that you were talking to me about the chat, because I kept on seeing some comments. It's like I see that we still have the note about the support of the Crier Media Network in the extra, and that I may have to re-record one now that we are fully independent and have been for quite some time now. So that's what you were trying to point out to me when you were mentioning it, and I finally got it. way more than half an hour later in Newfoundland. But I finally got it. All right, a little bit of news about some Canadians who make us proud, kids and cubs. Let's start with a little bit of hockey news. I'm afraid I have to take responsibility for jinxing Team Canada at the International Ice Hockey Federation Championships after Canada defeated the United States in the quarterfinal. I said, okay, well, at least our job here is done now. We don't have to win the whole thing. We took care of it, made sure the United States didn't. Guys, I wasn't asking you to take me seriously, because Canada then went on to lose 4-2 to Finland in the semifinal, and then 3-2 in overtime to Norway in the bronze medal match, coming back home empty-handed. I am so sorry. I said it. I jinxed. My bad. Over the course of the weekend, of course, the Montreal Canadiens got eliminated from the Stanley Cup playoffs, I believe losing the final match 6-1. Not surprising, probably because the team with some extremely sad news of the unfortunate passing of Claude Lemieux, a legend, but under very unfortunate circumstances that I will not re-mention here because they were triggering. Yeah. Yeah, it just seemed that after that first win against Carolina, that they just ran out of steam and couldn't. I was going to make a pun that was going to create an innuendo, and I didn't want to do that. I caught myself. Oh my God. But yeah, was not able to be able to make it happen. But for some reason, yeah, just after the first game, shots on goal seemed to be difficult. With only 12 shots on goal in game 2, 13 shots on goal in game 3, 18 shots on goal in game 4, you're not going to win a match on that. Game 5, they did manage to get 25 shots on goal, so they corrected that, but it was a big loss here. But throughout the entire 5-game matchup, Montreal was heavily outshot by Carolina by a total margin of 167-89, and you're not going to win a series. You can't score if you don't shoot on a goal. And so I don't know what happened with the Montreal Canadiens, but it just seems that they ran out of steam. In the Memorial Cup play, the Kitchener Rangers defeated the Everett Silvertips for the final to win the Memorial Cup. So in junior hockey, they are Canada's team this year. So congratulations to the OHL's Kitchener Rangers. I believe they won the entire event, if I'm not mistaken, with a perfect record, which is rather impressive. So just to take a look at that and just be sure that that is indeed the case here. Yep, a perfect record, won all 4 matches. So congratulations to them for that success. Also, kids and cubs, if you are a tennis fan like I am, you have a lot to cheer for. Unfortunately, Victoria Mboko lost her 3rd round match to Madison Keys at the French Open, but we still have Canadians in the running in 3 different events at the French Open. The first one is, while we were on air today, Gabriela Dabrowski with her partner Louise Stefani of Brazil were playing in the quarterfinal and had a victory, convincing 6-4, 7-5 against Sigmund and Zvonareva. They will face the #1 doubles team in the world, Katerina Siniakova and Taylor Townsend, in the semifinal. And based on the results now, these are literally the #1 and #2 doubles teams in the world. Siniakova and Townsend, respectively, are #1 and #2 as double players, and Dabrowski is the #3 ranked doubles player in the world, with Stefani the #5 player in the world. So the semifinal really should be a final, but the way that the draw worked out and their rankings at the time that they were included in the draw made it such that they are going to be facing each other there. So an opportunity if Dabrowski and Stefani can get past Siniakov and Townsend, they might have a good chat at winning the whole thing. Gabrielle Dabrowski is also still live in the mixed doubles with her partner Evan King, and I believe she's she's going to play her quarterfinal match there, and hopefully to reach the semifinal. And in men's singles, Felix Auger-Aliassime made some history for himself by getting to the furthest that he's ever been at the French Open. He has advanced to the quarterfinals, where he will be playing Flavio Cobolli from Italy, who is lower ranked than Felix Auger-Aliassime, but seems to have Auger-Aliassime's number in their 3 matchups that they have played so far. Cobolli has been on the winning end all 3 times. However, in their most recent matchup, Auger-Aliassime lost 10-8 in the final set, which was their closest match ever. And with Auger-Aliassime on a roll, maybe the scoreline will be different. Of course, for Cobolli, also, he has some motivation, because if he wins this match, he would enter the top 10 in the world for the first time. So that's a motivation. But Felix Auger-Aliassime, who, with his success to date, has now risen to number 4 in the world, has a very favorable draw, because Yannick Sinner wasn't feeling well and was eliminated, and he's the number 1 player in the world. Carlos Alcaraz missed the French Open this year due to injury, and Novak Djokovic, over the course of the weekend, who was the number 3 ranked player, was also eliminated. So Auger-Aliassime is the top player in his share of the draw, which means that if he is able to win his matches, if they go according to form, he's got a direct path to the final. And left in the draw on the other side is number 2 player, Zverev, who Auger-Aliassime actually has a favorable record against. So if Auger-Aliassime can get past Cobolli, there is literally a good chance that he could win it all. And I'm not sure if that would make him the first Canadian man ever to win a Grand Slam singles title. But I think that could actually be the case, and that would make some very big history. So, I mean, the path is there for him to go out and get it if he doesn't let the moment get a hold of him. But this is some very, very exciting time for Canadian tennis, and an exciting time for tennis in general, because we've also had news that, number 1, the Rafael Nadal Tennis Museum has been opened in Spain, and that he is very, 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 very happy with his life now. It's in Manacor, Spain. He says, "Luckily, I think I reached the limit of my abilities. I don't think mentally, but physically, yes. Honestly, today I can say no, I don't miss it, because I no longer my place. The chapter is well and truly closed. I have great memories of it, but I don't live with those memories every day. I say that with total honesty. I'm in a new stage of my life, and I'm enjoying it." And the reason why this is brought up is because he was probably asked about it, because Serena Williams has announced that she is returning to tennis. She's going to play a doubles tournament, the Queen's Tournament on grass, hopefully probably leading to her playing at Wimbledon. Don't know if she's going to play singles there, because she would definitely be getting a wild card entry if that was the case. But about 6 months ago, she registered to start the doping tests again, because they have to be registered for about 6 months before they can start playing. So that got some tongues wagging when she did that. When she left tennis, she didn't say that she was retiring, but she said that she was evolving away from tennis. So it looks like she has some unfinished business and is coming back. Of course, Venus Williams every now and then still plays from time to time. Yeah, who knows? Will Venus and Serena both play together as a doubles team? Who knows? Or if not with Venus, who will Serena play with? We should call up Leila Annie Fernandez the way that Venus Williams did when she decided to return to doubles. We don't know. But hey, if we can get more Serena on the courts, we definitely are for that. So if you're a tennis fan, lots of really, really good news out there. I don't think there are any other matches featuring Canadians scheduled for today. with the other ones being scheduled for tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. Felix Auger-Aliassime is scheduled for about 8 a.m. our time on the court. That's tomorrow. And, oh, well, look at that. It would appear that Gabriela Dabrowski got a walkover in mixed doubles. It seems that somebody from the team that she was going to play in the semifinal pulled out. In the quarterfinal pulled out, which means that she is now advanced to the semifinal and will be playing a team comprised of an American, Asia Mohammed, and a not sure who's from Croatian, Nikola Mektic. So Gabriela Dabrowski in the semifinals of both the women's doubles and mixed doubles at the same tournament. I think that might be a first for her as well. So there you go, kids and cubs. Really exciting times, Canadian tennis. And of course, as you know, as I mentioned before, September 16th to 18th, the Davis Cup tie against France, which will be played in Quebec City, and Felix Auger-Aliassime has confirmed his participation. So that will also be another big event coming up in the world of tennis. But before that, we will probably have Wimbledon, of course, the National Bank Open here in Canada, and the US Open. So lots of good news from our Canadian tennis players to look forward to before all of this is over. All right, kids and cubs, that's all I got for you. I might say, kids and cubs, I should announce this now. The show is going to be delayed tomorrow because I'm definitely going to be watching the Felix Auger-Aliassime match because I haven't had a chance to see him play at all yet at the tournament. So tomorrow's show will be delayed until after Felix hopefully wins. Actually, I'm going to say until Felix wins. And actually, I shouldn't say that because if he doesn't win, then that means that there isn't a show until the match is over. So I won't be at a regular time tomorrow. I will indulge my passion for tennis, and then I will come to you and have a show for you tomorrow after that. But I will try to get a nap in today and do that second show for you that I promised because I missed Monday. And hopefully it will not be a 3-hour show like this one is. It'll be a little shorter. But hopefully I'll be able to get you some details, additional details about some other stuff regarding Doug Ford and the selection of Carrie Lynn Findlay as being the leader of the BC Conservative Party sometime later today. And I very much apologize, like I said, for missing yesterday. Just circumstances. And, when we're three and we're doing an activity together, I can't always get my way every time. So, all right. With that, I say, amouri bisous. And hopefully we'll see you a little later. I will definitely give more than enough warning. I won't just put out the show up and then start in 5 minutes or something like that. I'll try to give at least a good hour or two warning before to give time for people to find us and all of that kind of stuff. So that's it for me for now. Thank you to the new people who were able to join us on the chat extraordinarily today. Especially, it was nice to have some people from the West Coast with us. So there you go. Okay. Kid Saucy, I can hear my mother now. Shoot the bloody puck. Oh, God, the number of times I yelled that during the series. All right, guys. I am gone.